Hey, we'd love to take 5 or 10 minutes to talk about our upcoming 6th season, but Fatty, this is a really long episode, so let's forego the pleasantries for now and get on with the business at hand.
No, it's not that long. No more than 3-4 hours long. Yeah, we're going to start with a little business, and that is about our partner Shimano. I've been racing on their components, braking with their brakes, riding in their shoes, wearing laser helmets, and sitting on pro bike saddles for the last several years. Shimano, Laser, and Pro Bike are all brands I trust for what is my most important day of the year, frankly, every single year. And it is really nice to know when pretty much every other part of your race prep is subject to change.
Yeah, Shimano really is the steady hand when it comes to componentry. High-tech, well-engineered, and reliable. Look, your training and prep, like Fatty's, will likely go through some ups and downs, but there's no reason your equipment has to follow that same pattern. So as you are laying out this Leadville season, get it started on the right foot by updating your race rig with Shimano brakes and shifting, and if you need a saddle, give the selection from Pro Bike a look.
Yeah, and protect your noggin with a laser helmet. Look, we're going to be talking about Shimano all season, so we want to make sure to thank them right now at the very first episode. Thanks for coming on board, Shimano, and being the title sponsor of this show for this, our 6th season. Check out the Shimano lineup at bike.shimano.com.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race, presented by Shimano. This is Season 6, Episode 1 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hide to Most.
I'm Fatty, and this episode is our walkthrough of the course, curated from Season 5. Of course, we put out a similar episode together back in Season 1, but the course has changed since then, and there's a lot more to learn. Here's a fun fact. If you start listening to this episode at the same time the gun goes off at 6th and Harrison, we will likely be in your ear for the first 35 to 40 miles. That's right. This is your one-stop shop for a turn-by-turn description of the most famous out-and-back course in mountain biking.
Yep, there's 105 miles in front of us, so let's get to it. No wasting time here. We're in the corrals, and Ken has that shotgun. Time to get rolling.
Every part of this course kicks you in the teeth.
All right, as promised, this is the course. We are talking you through what you need to do to have the best possible day this August 13th, from the days before the race to the shotgun blast at 6th and Harrison, to every mile of pavement, goat trail, and single track, to when you finally ride up the red carpet and get that finisher's medal hung around your neck.
It's exciting to think about that finisher's medal. Today, we are talking about the opposite end of the course, the first couple miles of the race, including the starting line. And here is the first course tip of the day. Plan to get to the starting line as early as possible. I get there at about 5:30, a full hour before the race starts. Why an hour? For a couple of reasons. First, especially if this is your first time racing the Leadville 100, trust me, you do not yet grasp how big of a crowd there is going to be at the starting line on race day. Getting to the general area, much less the actual starting line, it takes time, effort, and some luck with the parking gods. Second, the sooner you get there, the better spot in the corral you're going to be able to get.
That spot in the corral used to be a much more important reason than it is now, because with a couple of minutes between each corral being released, it means the starting line congestion the LT100 is famous for is now a thing of the past. If you want to be near the front of your corral, great. Most people, though, will actually do better tucked in and riding with the flow of their corral. So it's more important that you get into the correct corral than where in the corral you get in.
Yeah, it used to be, you would see people really, fighting like you were trying to get to be in the front row of a rock concert. It just doesn't matter anymore. In my experience last year, Hadi, was starting, basically right in the dead center of the green corral, and it worked great. I think there is one exception to that rule, however, and it is going to apply to a lot of people. If you are in the backmost corral, that is the white corral, you're starting at the same time as, I'm going to approximate here, about a third of the racers, right? The folks in that group are going to run the gamut of experience. Honestly, if you can put yourself more toward the front of that pack, that's fewer mistakes that others can make that might ruin your day.
Yeah, the reality is somebody has to be in the back third of the white corral, but that somebody does not have to be you. If you're going to be starting from the white, get to that starting line early.
Yeah. So what do you do while you were standing in that corral for an hour? That's a slow-moving hour, I will tell you that. For one thing, you're going to shiver is what you're going to do because you are going to be cold. But if you brought a jacket and track pants that you're willing to give up, maybe, something you bought at a thrift store a couple of weeks before the race, you can wear those right up until the last 5 or 10 minutes before 6:30 a.m. Maybe you've written your name and number on a tag on the inside, then toss them to your crew or a helpful stranger on the side. And there is a pretty good chance, I would say a 2 in 3 chance, that you will get them back after the race.
The next thing you can and should do while you're waiting is go to the bathroom one more time. You want to do this. And there's generally plenty of outhouses and so forth on or near the start line. So you'll find them. There could be lines, but use them for sure. To that end, make a friend with a person standing next to you in the corral and then make a bargain with that person. You'll hold their bike while they go to the porto and they hold yours while you're gone. Congrats, you've just made your first race ally of the day.
And it's good to have an ally. And the final thing to do while you are waiting in your corral is eat. The first hour or so of the race is crowded. It is intense, and you are less likely than the whole rest of the day to find an opportunity to fuel during that first hour. So when it's 6:10 or so in the morning, load up. I personally am a big fan of Bonk Breaker energy bars before the race, which, by the way, you can order at thefeed.com. But frankly, eat whatever kind of bar or fuel is your favorite and has worked for you before your big training rides throughout the season. So, yes, this is a reminder to train like you race throughout the year. Practice eating that same thing right before all of your big training rides.
Likewise, if you're going to use an on-again, off-again approach to hydration packs, consider one of the first part of the race for the same reason you want to eat something before the race begins. If you think about it, for the first hour to 2 hours of the Leadville 100, you are in some tight knots of people. And then you have a big hard climb, then rolling double track with one good line, and a lot of people passing. And then a bomber white knuckle paved descent. A hydration pack from the start line to pipeline can be a real friend.
Yeah, that is a really good tip right there, Huddy. I've gone both ways off the starting line, and I actually think this year I may use a USWE pack from the starting line this year for exactly the reason that you're describing.
In the final minutes before the race gun, do a little final systems check while you're there as well. Is your GPS on and ready to start? Is your helmet buckled? That's a good one to have done. Is your bike in the gear you want to start the race in? That's a very good tip. How do you want to get away? You want to start spinning like Mighty Mouse, or do you want to start cranking and get some forward momentum?
Yeah, it could go the other way as well. I have ridden downhill to the starting line and you get in a big gear. You don't check that, and then you stand up at the beginning of the race and you find that you are in your tallest gear. No bueno. Honestly, every year I hear someone doing a big gnashy gear shift right at the starting line. And you know that sound. And it would really suck to drop a chain in the first 10 feet of the Leadville 100. So the anthem plays, you put your helmet back on, the gun goes off, and as soon as that happens, your corral starts walking forward. And then at whatever intervals the race decides, last year the interval length went up as the corrals got bigger, but, we've heard rumblings of shorter time gaps between corrals this year. Sooner than you would think, it's going to be your corral and your turn to go.
And a lot of our previous warnings from version 1.0 of the course still will fall to the wayside here because of the wave starts. A lot of the traditional cautions no longer apply. We used to warn, of the accordion effect 200 yards into the race. This is no longer a big deal unless you're at the back of the white corral, which is big enough that we should mention a couple hundred yards into the race, you stop descending and then you turn uphill. You're going to see and hear braking well before you get to that little uphill kicker.
Yeah, but for most of you, that accordion effect no longer applies. I've seen people lock up, however, and very narrowly avoid going down on it would be and that at the bottom of that little dip. And it's sad because it's super unnecessary. It is very easy to fixate on a wheel a foot ahead of you instead of keeping your eyes up and on what's ahead. And, if you see something like that, make sure you call it out as you brake so you don't wind up having the person behind you also get surprised and rear-ending you.
And we used to warn about that right turn on McCarthy Drive right after the middle school. It's still worth noting that the inside line is tempting there, but often has some gravel on top of the pavement. That's loose over hard, folks. That's not a good recipe for traction. But the pinch of that turn is no longer too big of a problem. Still, just call it out.
Yeah, and one more. We used to warn about the right turn about 1.8 miles from the beginning of the race from Turquoise Lake Road onto yet another road also called Turquoise Lake Road. But that turn is no longer a problem. There is so much more open space, plenty of room to turn. You've got room to pass. You've got room to let people get by. Of course, it is still important to be safe, but the paved downhill section, the 3-point-something miles of it at the beginning of the race is not the freak-out concern that it used to be.
I used to love that freak-out. I'm a old crick guy, so it never bothered me, but I get it. I mean, I understand why Lifetime did what they did. By the way, folks, this was not easy for them. I mean, they obviously heard from traditionalists like me, like Ken Klober, who wanted to keep the whole pack going off, and it's more stressful, too, for the local authorities in town, for the Leadville police and the sheriff's department there, to get the waves going and to get the corrals out in their individual waves. So hats off to them for getting this done. There is still a lot of energy here, a lot of adrenaline as you're rolling out of town. So remember to be safe. Move up only when you can. Communicate your moves, on your left, on your right, and steer clear of sketchy riders.
Then 3.5 miles into the race, you are making one last turn off the pavement and onto the Jeep Road. And now you are on a couple miles of flat dirt before St. Kevin's. And the first big climb of the day.
And that's where we'll pick you up next time on the dirt, on the course.
So last time on the course, we focused on the starting line and the first few miles of the course, all of which is on pavement. Today, we're talking about the part of the course that, to me at least, signals when the race really begins, the St. Kevin's climb.
Yeah, and Fatty, before we get to that right turn onto the dirt, I think a little word of warning, and I'd like to hear your take on this too. There are railroad tracks as you kind of head for that right turn onto Kevin's. I've never had an issue with them, but it's worth, especially with the folks, this is a first-time event for them, you'll know they're coming. I mean, you kind of bottom out on the pavement there, and you're going to, a left turn is coming up, and as soon as you make that left turn, you're going to cross some railroad tracks and then cross a river, too. Don't worry, don't go through the river. There's a road that goes over the river, but be careful for the railroad tracks. They're right there. Just, square up to them, put that front wheel perpendicular to them to get them over the railroad tracks in clean fashion. And then...
Yeah, wise words there.
At about 9,800 feet, that's where we're sitting about right now, which is about as low as you get, I think, at the Leadville Trail 100. Still hard to breathe.
You're a little lower at Twin Lakes Dam, but yeah, you're close.
Are you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
9,800 feet. You're about 3.3 miles into your event, so more than 100 miles to go. Yikes. You're going to make a right turn onto some really nice dirt, actually, initially, and start to actually climb ever so slightly.
Yeah, you start climbing a little bit. You're going to net out over the next just under 3 miles about 100 feet. You're going to be at about 9,900 feet when you make that left turn onto the first iconic climb of the day, the St. Kevin's climb. So it is nice to know that it is just 100 feet that you are climbing up, but it's even more nice to know that on the way back home, that it nets out to downhill slightly because your legs are going to be a little more cooked by then. But like the rest of this race, that 3 miles of Jeep road where you are going to have a lot of adrenaline and fresh legs and you're excited for the day, it rolls up and down. It's going to feel a little bit more than that 100 feet that you're climbing in that little time. Nothing is flat for very long in this race, so don't expect it to be even a false flat. You're always going to be going up or down a little bit.
Yeah, I would second that. I think this feels like a lot more than 100 feet, and not only that, I think there's still some good adrenaline going on here, even though we're on dirt, and we've really started the race proper here as the Leadville Trail 100 goes. Additionally, this is, if it's been dry in the days before the race, could have some dust here. The sun is quite low, so you'll get kind of this glare effect too. You want to make sure that your glasses are wiped clean, or you don't have them on at all, maybe is a wiser choice there. So look for some dust, even though, again, we have wave starts and there's going to be fewer riders around you. There's going to be some dust kicked up from the folks. For instance, if you're in white, I think the folks who have already gone well ahead of you, they'll have established this small little dust storm that may, it's probably going to be an annoyance at the very least. And you just want to focus on the trail or the wheel in front of you and make sure that your vision is okay. Now, you might be thinking as you hit the dirt, wow, race on, right? Here we go. This is what I signed up for, what I paid for. Is now the time to light up? Maybe I put the hammer down and go for it. Well,
it is so tempting to do that.
No, yeah, you will want to, but there's not a lot of value in burning matches this early to get in a group where you can draft for a long time. Get a good line here, like in this section of the course. Stay on someone's wheel if you can find a good match, and just hold things steady at this point. Pays to listen to somebody even like Rose Grant, a pro, who she saw her competitors go up the trail at this point. Like she was like, okay, there they go. What do I do? And she stuck to her plan, which is, okay, if I've got somebody here that's wants to do what I do, which is pace and remain calm, then I'm going to do that. If not, I'm going to stick to my game plan. And that's probably the right thing to do here for everyone.
Yeah, that's right. And in former seasons, another woman champion, Rebecca Rush, told us the same thing. Start slow so you can finish fast, right? This is not the time, even though your legs feel like you've got all the power in the world to light it up and see if you can, pass a bunch of people. You are about to hit one of the hard climbs of the day. Is there anything that you are going to gain now that you can't gain easier and more efficiently later on as you are going, after you turn onto the downhill pavement, or as you are riding on Hagerman's, or as you are riding on the pavement after Powerline? The answer is no. This is not the time for you to really see, to stretch your legs and see what you got in there. Stay conservative, keep your heart rate at a decent rate, and be ready for what is going to be a pretty tough climb that is going to start at mile 6.1. There's going to be a couple of cattle guards, and then the road is going to fork left, and then boom, uphill. The next mile and a half is going to feel a lot different than that first 6 miles you just did, because you are no longer going downhill or effectively flat. You are now on St. Kevin's, and you are going to remember this moment for the rest of your life.
Yeah, what you call St. Kevin's and where it actually starts is kind of up for interpretation, but really this is the spot. I mean, when people say Kevin's, they really mean here when you've kind of gone left at the fork, and it does. The pitch goes from kind of this rolling, at times flat, to your front wheel is definitely, a little higher and stays higher, as you ride. And in a lot of races, this would be a headline climb. Like this would be, especially if this was a loop course, a shorter loop course, if we were doing loops, in circles down to Turquoise Road and just doing continuous loops here, this would be the penultimate climb of the day. Here in the Leadville Trail 100, it's just an appetizer, really. It's a shot across the bow to give you a sense of what's coming your way, what's really in your future, which is not a lot of fun.
One of the things that I remember from one of the early years that I did Leadville is something Ken Klober said when he's sort of talking about the course. He said, you're going to start St. Kevin's and your legs are going to be screaming at you. and you are going to wish that you were dead. And this is going to be the best you feel the rest of the day. And it's true, right? This is the first climb of a lot of hard climbs. It is tough. Now, you've got about a mile and a half that is going to be really difficult. You're going to climb from about 9,900 feet to about 10,600 feet, 700 feet of climbing. That doesn't sound like a lot, or those of you who live in Nebraska and Florida, maybe it sounds like a whole lot. But compared to what you're going to be doing for the rest of the day, this isn't a ton. But 700 feet of climbing at altitude, when your legs aren't accustomed to it, it's going to be, you're going to feel some burn. There is no getting around it.
Before we go into the race experience, let's talk about the terrain, Fatty, for a moment. I mean, this section right here in particular is classic Leadville dirt. We're talking about decomposed granite. It rolls fast. Like, you're not going to be in loamy stuff or deep sandy stuff very often or at all. So it's quick rolling dirt, especially if it's been, if it's rain or if it's been dry out. If it's dry out, you're just going to get dust. If it's rained out, it'll just pack down. The dirt here really drains nice too. So unless we get a deluge,
which can happen.
If it rains, it can happen, but if it rains, you're still going to roll fast. So expect speed either way. If it's dry, though, expect speed and noise. Like, your tires will be graveling along and kicking up dirt, and knobs will be grabbing small rocks and kicking up into your down tube. So expect a little bit of that, too, as you make your way through St. Kevin's.
Going up St. Kevin's, it's wide enough that there are two, and I would say at the beginning of this climb, maybe even three lines, so that you don't have to get single file or even double file, two across. You can get three across, and there's generally a place where you can pass. Don't burn matches. But at the same time, I have found, and I'm sure everyone has, that if you are climbing and you are going slower than what is comfortable for you, that can be as painful and can tax your legs almost as much as going too fast.
Another thing of note here is, in a lot of parts of Leadville, there's extreme beauty here. I mean, as soon as you enter the dirt, I think, heading for the Kevin's climb, you're out there looking at the prairie. There could be cattle. There could be cattle on the trail. In fact, this whole kind of section, there could be cattle. And then there's this portion of the trail right off the trail. If you look to your right, I've only been told this, there's some type of old mining equipment right there. I mean, I've never seen it. Have you? I've been told about it. I've never seen it.
I've seen it, but not while I am racing. I've ridden up St. Kevin's a number of times, not on a race day, and I've seen that there must have been a mining operation just off to the right. And if you know to look, you can see it's like, wow, this is, you sometimes forget, because you're here for the race, but Leadville has so much rich history. If you get a chance to ride the St. Kevin's or the mineral trail, the Mineral Loop Trail around Leadville, there's a lot of great mining history there. Make sure you take a look at it. Make sure you take a look, to the left and right. But frankly, we're all just looking at the wheel ahead of us for during the race. But if you're there in the days before or the days after you come for a vacation, make sure you look around at this beautiful spot that you're riding in.
And if you're feeling bad here, if you're suffering, don't worry. The other folks around you are feeling probably the same way. There's not going to be a lot of fresh-looking faces. They're probably going to be faces that are looking down at stems or down at top tubes or looking up at God or whatever you look for to get you through, a little pitch. Look, Fatty and I call this a teaser climb, but, it does hurt. I mean, there's going to be a little pain here. This is going to be the first kick in the quads for you. So there'll be a little shock there. This is, again, partly from what you're dealing with as far as a pitch is concerned. This is partly from the altitude and maybe from burning a pack of matches early in the day, too. I mean, maybe you've already spent yourself a little bit getting onto the Kevin's climb. So there's a number of reasons why you might be feeling poorly right here.
Yeah, let's talk about whether this is a good place, in the Kevin's climb to burn a match or two. Now, we're going to be talking with Rohit in a minute, and he has some perspective on this that I think is worth considering. But for most of the folks who are ahead of the White Corral in particular, I don't think that you are really going to be given any particular advantage by burning matches, by, putting a lot of effort into doing a difficult pass where you might be dropping into a little erosion rut or going a little bit off trail, and going over hard rocks to get, a half second ahead of someone. Sometimes there's an easy pass, and do that so that you can kind of keep the cadence, but avoid surges if you can. Remember, this is not, this is just the appetizer that Hadi was talking about. You are going to have so many difficult climbs, and any burn you put into your legs right now, you're going to pay for twofold later in the day.
Yeah, so what do you do instead? Like, what's a game plan here? Okay, well, a good game plan is to take stock, like look around. Maybe talk to somebody if you can get any breath out or in. Find a group and make some allies is a great plan here. Or if nothing else, just take stock or look at the folks around you and try to identify, that looks like a person maybe I could hang with for maybe not the whole day, but until we get the pipeline or what have you. So do that. Like, see if you can, instead of surging and trying to plow ahead, figure out, okay, can I make a little group out of what we have here and maybe ride that train down the road some?
A lot of wisdom there, Hadi, because these are the people most likely that you are going to be riding with for the next 9, 10, 11 hours in the day. When someone passes you, you take, a half a breath to say, hey, nice pass. Or if you pass someone, say, looking good. Make a note, say something friendly, make an ally, because there are so many places where you're going to be able to work together later in this day. Any friendliness, any kindness that you can put out there, any positive energy is going to come back to you later in this race. And it is meaningful. You and I have both been in places where if it weren't for someone's wheel that you can hop onto, your day would have gone a lot slower and a lot worse. This is the time for you to sort of, pay something forward now and then watch it come back a little bit later. So about 7.2, mile 7.2, you're going to come to a left turn that you are never going to forget. This is a great waypoint, and it tells you that in a minute, things are going to get a little bit easier. I used to think that this was like the moment where it's like, okay, now get a gel out and eat. A little older, a little wiser, I now know that it is not quite yet. Right after that hard left turn, it stays steep for about another half mile. It stays really steep. And if you pull a gel out, you're going to have a hard time eating it right then. But in about a half mile, it is going to ease off a little bit, and you're going to have an opportunity to start on your fueling practice that you've been practicing the whole season, and you're going to be able to be a little bit, you're going to be able to keep your energy levels high the whole day because you are going to fuel right from the first half hour of the race.
Yeah, I love that little left-hand turn. I consider that one of my, first little intermediate checkpoint finish lines, little sprint lines of the day. Once I make that left, I go, okay, cool. Made it here. That's the first goal of the day, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, if you get to Leadville early enough and you are, let's say, 5 days out from the race, I would tell you, go down and ride this section of the course, ride out of town and ride to this hard left turn that Fatty and I just described, and then turn around and come back. It's a good little way to go, okay, because there could be issues in this section of the course, and this is early in the course, and this could mess up your whole day if somebody fouls you up in front of you or something like that. So get an idea how this thing plays out, because it could potentially save your day. And again, you'll get to know right where that left-hand turn is, and that is about mile 7.7 into the race, 10,600 feet. It kind of levels out a little bit, although, like Fatty said, you're still kind of rolling, climbing. And this is a good spot, actually, to, make a pass without killing yourself. And I like to do that here because the trail does narrow down. Now we get onto more true double track in this area. You'll see a lot lot of the portions of the trail from this part all the way up to Carter Aid Station where it is true double track, where you have to pick one side or the other. And so you want to make sure you're not caught behind somebody that might slow down your progress from this point forward. Another good idea here is to see if you can also get your heart rate under control, because as you've come up right before that left-hand turn, this steep section we've been talking about, your heart's going to be at near its maximum. You're going to be really working hard, and you're going to want to try to just bring things back down to your race pace level if you can. And just take a deep breath and take note of how beautiful the area is and how great things smell, because you're in the trees. It's beautiful. It's Leadville. This is what you paid for. You're in this high, beautiful spot. So don't forget to do that as well.
You notice that we are we're calling out moments for you to establish memories, because really on August 14th, what you're going to have after this race is hopefully a sweatshirt and a belt buckle. And more important than that, you're going to have a lot of stories to tell. So we're planting the seeds of those stories.
Right. So pat yourself on the back. You've just completed the hardest part of the iconic segments in the iconic race of the Leadville 100, and that is the St. Kevin's climb.
Last time on the course, we hit the dirt and the first climb of the day, St. Kevin's. Astonishingly, we are now at part 6 of the course series, and we are only 8 miles into the race. Hadi, this is not sustainable.
At this pace, we're going to get a lead belt buckle, not any gold or any silver. It's going to be plastic, I think, because we're really behind any type of race pace at this point. So we're going to put some real mileage into the course in this episode, including what will almost certainly be your fastest miles of the whole day.
Right. So right now we're about 8 miles into the race. You've survived those 15% grades on Kevin's, and you've hopefully fueled and drank something. So now settle in, because for the next 2.5 miles from here to the Carter Aid Station, you're not going to lose or gain a lot of altitude. You're going to be going up and down constantly, but always, you'll be right around 10,600 to 10,700 feet. If you've got gears, you are going to be shifting constantly.
Mm-hmm. Shift early, shift often, because there's some few up and downs right in this area. A lot of variety in the trail. Some full-on, wide dirt road like you've seen already earlier down on Kevin's. Some double track with 2 great lines where you can just tear along. And then a lot of double track as well, Fatty, where there's only one good line. You really want to be on one side or the other.
Yeah. And if you get in a place where you are trying to execute a pass and find that you are in the bad line, it might not be a bad idea to go ahead and drop back, wait for there to be a good line, and then take another shot at it. The fact is, if you're going to pass, you need to be decisive, because you're just never going to have a ton of time where both lines are good. So ask yourself the question whenever you're going to make a pass. Is it worth it? Because a couple miles from now, you're going to make a right turn at Carter Aid Station, and then you are going to have miles and miles and miles of wide open road where passing costs you nothing, at least technically, right? You can pass around someone with 8 feet on either side, so you're going to be just fine. We're not saying don't pass, right? We're not saying never burn a match. We're just saying don't burn your matches. It's a long day, and you're going to need every single match that you have later in the day.
A couple of notes here on the technical moments you're probably going to find during this section of the course. There are a couple spots where you go from big gear that is, pedaling downhill to quick, punchy, surprise climbs that require you to get into like first through third gear, or your lowest gears. If you're not ready, you can stall out on these, and that'll just going to bring your speed way down. We're talking about pacing in this episode, and right in this section too, and in these up and down sections of the course. You're kind of looking for some pace, looking for some roll here. So you don't want your speed to be scrubbed because you're not ready for a gear. If you are ready, you can ride up and over these little humps. Keep your eyes up, look down trail, look for them, be ready to shift, because probably there will be someone ahead of you who is not ready and dismounts right in front of you. So look ahead for those shifts, look ahead for those people dismounting. Be nice when this happens. It's going to happen. They're not doing it on purpose to ruin your race. I know at the moment you might be a little pissed, but you'll get through it. All right, and then you're going to get to the corner. There's a right before a downhill sandy off-camber, kind of a nasty little spot, but don't worry. Marilee is right there. She's yelling at folks to watch out for this skittish off-camber, slidey type corner. It's a great place to say hi to Marilee, but focus on the trail. And remember this. This is a spot where Fatty left and a little bit of skin. You want to look, if you see like a chunk of bib short laying on the ground or maybe even some skin, if you have time, grab it and just return it to Fatty later. If not, just keep moving. But the point here, folks, is this is a little off-camber section. It can be quite slippery. Again, Marilee will be there warning for you, and just be careful right in the section.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be safe, and remember, there's a lot of this rolly ball bearing style decomposed granite on hard packed earth. If you are bringing too much heat into a turn, you can easily go down. It's not going to be race ending if you do, but it can leave a little bit of a rash there. And who wants to ride with that for 10 hours, right? So now you roll down for about a half mile toward the Carter aid station, your first aid station of the day. It is neutral, meaning that you cannot have your crew at this aid station, but the fact is they've got everything that you could possibly want there. Chances are you're not going to need anything at all because you've only been racing for, 10 and a half miles so far. However, remember this place because when you are at about mile 93 or so, you'll be here again, and chances are you will want something. You'll want a little drink of water or is a shoulder to cry on. Who knows what you may want, but they have it all. So you are now going to make a right turn onto Turquoise Lake Road, and it is time for your fastest, easiest miles of the day. You are going to be going downhill fast for about 3.5 miles, and it's going to take maybe 5 minutes. And during that 3.5 miles, during that 5 minutes, you're going to get rid of all the elevation that you earned as you fought your way up Keefens.
Regarding this section here, you can go quite hard here. And I have found myself pedaling as hard as I can as you make this descent away from Carter and working pretty hard. I mean, surprisingly hard as you leave this section. So it can be easy if you make it easy. If you get behind somebody and make it easy and draft a little bit.
I was just looking at my Strava as I was preparing this segment for this podcast. I looked at my top speed for the day, 41.2 miles per hour. And yes, absolutely, people are still just going vzz, 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 right by me, no problem. So you're going to go fast. If you're the kind of person who loves just flying downhill, go for it. How much time will you make up? How much time will you earn in this race? I have no idea. A couple of seconds. Be safe. Let's just go ahead and leave it at that. It's a high mountain road, and it has high mountain road type maintenance. There are cracks. There are bumps, sort of rises and surprisingly sharp curves. There are potholes. You know what I'm talking about, right? Especially as you get to the bottom, there are places where they've got paint marks showing, hey, there is a section of the road here that is in need of repair. Maybe it's repaired this year. I don't think it's been repaired for 10 years, so don't expect it, and don't expect a perfectly smooth, glass-like tarmac. It is going to be cracked and bumpy, and it is up to you to make sure that you are safe. Also, it's been dry on race day for the last, I don't even know how many years, but I know in 2009, I think the morning started with it rainy, and it was on this part of the course that I crashed out, my one and only time at this race, because I was looking down, keeping my eyes out of the rain. I grabbed some brake and found out that the road was slick, and down I went off the side. And that was the end of my day. Don't let that happen to you. Be safe. Never get faster. Never get going so fast that you can't rein yourself back in.
One thing I think we've missed over the years is, take your mountain bike out and go on the pavement with it. And take it downhill on the pavement. Because you're going to do it a few times. And this is one of those sections you just want to be prepared for how your bike responds at 40 miles an hour on the pavement, going downhill with you not pedaling. And you're just zipping away. So not a bad idea to give this a little test run and just see how you feel on your mountain bike at these speeds. Now, you're going to come ripping down this thing, and a left-hander horseshoe signals kind of the end of this high-speed descent, but not the end of the pavement. You got about 1.5 miles more pavement to go up. It's a climb. You're headed towards Hagerman at this point. Climbing is not too strenuous, I should say, about between 2 and 6% gradient. But it's a good chance to kind of, get those climbing legs back and go, okay, now we're going into a different type of effort. Good chance to eat and drink as well. And a great chance to start looking for a group you may want to work with for this drag down Hagerman Dirt Road that's coming your way next.
And Hagerman's is coming next. And Hagerman's is an incredibly short section. You're only going to be on that for about 1.8 miles, under 2 miles. But you're going to make a hairpin right turn. And you're now at 10,200 feet, 15.2 miles into the race. Same altitude you started the day at. So all this work you've done so far has brought you to the exact same altitude as the Leadville city limits. And you're on a very wide dirt road. It is almost like, I would say, a 3-lane highway, right? And it can be very washboarded. Last year, it was not. Last year, it was smooth, recently graded. For 2022, who knows, right? It changes year to year. Count on it being kind of washboardy and that you are going to need to do a little bit of line hunting to find the great line. If you have been smart about making allies so far in the race at the starting line on the sort of flattish dirt section before you started climbing Keevens, as you were going down this pavement before Hagerman's, by now you should have friends. You should have people that you're riding with. Plan on working with them now. If you haven't done that so far, it is time to start. Don't do this segment on your own if you can avoid it. It is so much faster if you do it with others. So let's assume that you found a little group to work with. Take short pulls, a few seconds. Do not surge off the front. It is so easy to want to be the hero and start applying some pressure. You should not be doing that. Instead, remember your aim. You want to get to Sugarloaf, the next hairpin that you were going to make, a little sooner and a little fresher than you otherwise would. Because trust us, you want to be fresh when you get to Sugarloaf. So look in front of you, think maybe I can bridge the gap. Look behind you, think maybe I can let them bridge to me. Let little efforts bring a group together and then work together. Very short pulls, 3 to 5 seconds, 10 if there's only a couple of you, and take a pull, drop off the back, let them take a turn. Don't be a hero. Don't let other people be the hero either. It seems to me, Hadi, that there is always some big, strong guy who is happy to take a very long pull. And while I have taken advantage of people like that, let me give some advice. Do not be that guy. Take your pull, be a part of the group, contribute, but help everyone in your little peloton do better in the race. Them doing well doesn't hurt your placing in the race. You are not racing against these people. You are genuinely racing together. So 3 to 5 seconds, 10 to 15 if it's just a couple of you, then let the next person go. Don't sacrifice yourself. Okay, I'm going to get off that hobby horse, but listen to what I said in my race report a couple of days after the race last year on this little section in Hagerman's. I think it's worth listening to. Between the two of us, without, neither of us were surging off the front, but instead putting in, nice little efforts to bridge from the next group, to the next group, to the next group. And I mean, it's, only a slight exaggeration to say we were cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't our intent. We were just wanting to find, the next group and then work with them. But he and I were faster than other groups because other groups were just, one guy would go up front and then be a hero. Neither of us were being heroes. we really did a fast time. And I mean, I was looking at my Strava afterward, and I was within 30 seconds of my fastest time ever on the that Hagerman's piece, just because I was working with someone who is really doing great work with me. It was great. So you seriously, in this little, it's just a 2-mile segment, but you can make a big difference and get to the next hard climb of the race a little fresher, and that's worth doing. So your time on Hagerman started with a hairpin, and it is ending with another hairpin at mile 17, where you are going to be trading in this big, wide, smooth dirt road for a true hard climbing Jeep road. And you've done about 300 feet of climbing in that 1.8 miles.
The second hairpin we're talking about here is a left-hand hairpin, by the way. In training, I lost a buddy here. He had not seen the course before, and he went straight on Hagerman's. And he ended up out on the Colorado Trail somewhere. Well, and we were at the bottom.
It's a beautiful ride. It's off course.
We were at the bottom of power line eventually going, where is he? We don't know where he is. He found us eventually. So it's a left hand, folks, onto Sugarloaf. We love Sugarloaf. This is a beautiful climb. The bottom section is probably the hardest part because it's rocky, and you're going to have to find good spots to dodge around rocks and get over rocks. And people are changing lines a lot here. Like if you get on to Sugarloaf with other folks around you, people are going to be bouncing left and right across the trail trying to find that nice little section. You can see pretty much straight up, this first, how we call this, the gnarliest portion of Sugarloaf. You can see most of the way up it. So you'll be able to pick out your line. And again, we talked about going to see Keevens. Going to see Sugarloaf, especially this lower section, not a bad idea either if you have the time to do it in the days leading to the race. So, but again, Fatty, I love this section. Your legs should still feel good at this point. The day's starting to warm up. The sun, you'll start to feel the sun on you a little bit. You'll get a good view of the valley. At mile 19, you'll be at elevation 11,100 feet if you have an accurate GPS device. This will be the second highest point of the race. That's 500 feet you've climbed since you turned onto Hagerman's, but it feels like a lot more.
It does. It feels like a lot more. But you are now at the second highest you're going to be for the whole day. You'll be here again. So if you don't see everything, you'll get to see it from the opposite perspective much later in the day. At that point, you're not going to be as interested in views, so maybe enjoy it now. Next up, you are going to be descending. You are going to be going down the power line descent. And that is, I think, a make or break segment of the Leadville 100. Doing it safe and doing it well sets you up for success in the day. And that is where we are going to be picking up next episode on the course. Last time on the course, we rode up from the St. Keevens climb to the Carter Aid Station, down Turquoise Lake Road, and up Hagerman's and Sugarloaf.
Yeah, you're 19 miles into this race now when you finish the Sugarloaf climb, and at the top of the second highest point in the race, 11,000 feet or so here. At any other race, the climb you have just done and the altitude you have just reached would be celebrated as a massive accomplishment. But at the LT100, it almost gets forgotten because of what is still ahead of you.
And what is ahead of you is one of the, let's go ahead and call it, most terrifying moments of the race, because this is one of the two places where if you're going to have a bad moment on a downhill, it's going to happen. That is negative thinking, and I'm going to put it out of my mind. The fact is, you have gone 19 miles. You've got 86 left to go. You've got a climb that is going to take you 1,300 feet higher than you are at this moment. But we're going to get to the iconic Columbine climb another time, because this episode, the course is all about heading down. You are about to descend from 11,000 feet to 9,600 feet. That is 1,000 feet lower than than the town of Leadville, the place where you started the race at. And you're going to do all of that in under 4 miles.
Before you plummet back to earth, it's worth noting that right around mile 19, between finishing your big Sugarloaf climb and beginning the power line descent, you got a minute or two here of relatively flat, easy riding. This is a great opportunity, like we always say, to eat and drink. Yes, stuff something in your mouth, guzzle something down quickly because you're going to need it. You're not going to have your hands in a position where you can grab a bottle or a gel. So do it now. Once you begin the power line descent, those will be off the menu to you till you hit the pavement. And you'll hit the pavement eventually. So just don't miss this chance, again, to eat and drink.
Yeah. Objectively, you're not going to be on the power line for all that long. It's, for me, I checked my Strava. I was descending from the top of the power line to hitting the pavement about 11 minutes. And, fast descenders, people who are actually really good at this, they're there for much less time, and they are constantly passing people like me. However, one kind of rider I always do pass when I'm doing this race are people who are on the side of the trail fixing flats. Sometimes that is just bad luck. Sometimes, however, it is riding a bad line and bashing a rock. I've seen, I don't know how many people over the course of my 20x times I've raced this, but people will execute a bad pass, hitting some very square embedded rocks, and boom, it doesn't matter how good your rims are. It doesn't matter how good your tires are. It doesn't matter how much sealant you have. A good hard snake bite will cut through it all. And then you are fixing your tire instead of racing. So don't be imprudent with how you pass, and watch for the best, smoothest line you can take.
Yep, the famous fatty line in the Race Across the Sky movie. I always make a game out of counting how many people have a flat on power line, and that number is always 5 or more, I think was. And has that number stayed the same over the years?
I don't see as many as I used to. Sealant has gotten a lot better than it used to be. Tires have gotten better. NV wheels, we'll get to the ad for them in a bit, but the fact is the nice round hookless bead or hookless rim just makes it so that you don't flat as often. One other non-ad that I'm going to go ahead and add in is I actually just a few minutes ago finished putting in new sealant into my tires, and that is the Silka Ultimate Sealant. And that stuff, it was kind of amazing. I started picking out thorns out of my tires. Well, these are not brand new tires. It's just new sealant. And it was just amazing how instantly every single one would seal. Boom, boom, boom. So I don't know. It's Silka, our Silka Marginal Gains podcast is kind of a sister show, and we can't help ourselves. But yeah, I'm a big fan so far of that sealant.
Yeah, better tires, better rims means generally fewer flats. And of course, it really doesn't present a lot of thorns or hopefully not a lot of foreign debris on it. And it's just really the rock bash you really have to be concerned yourself with. The other thing you want to watch out for.
But there are tacks, right? I mean, that is one thing that has unfortunately become an issue out on the Leadville 100 course. Is there's some ne'er-do-wells who want to scatter crud, glass, and tacks out on the course. And good sealant will take care of that better than just about anything else.
Another thing you want to watch for, and you won't be able to ignore it, and that's the morning sun here. The morning sun is glaring in your eyes. You get two things going here. You get a low sun that's glaring into your eyes, and you get dust as well if it's been dry out. And that combination will create a pretty annoying glare that makes vision compromised. So your trail focus needs to be 100% here. You really want to keep your eyes on the ground, looking down trail, as well as the other riders obviously around you. But you really want to be focusing on picking up the trail because vision will be compromised. And we said this before on the show, along with pre-riding Kevans and maybe Sugarloaf, if you can, go ahead and ride up here, but do so, again, on a pre-race or a recon ride. Do so about the time of the morning you expect to go down power lines. You get an idea of the vision issues up here, which, again, can, at the very least, slow you down. At the worst, cause you to fall down.
Yeah, what you're saying is very much an extension of the drum beat we have beat for 5 seasons now, which is try not to do anything new on race day. And that includes try not to be riding a technical part of the course for the first time on race day, and try not to be riding it for the first time at the time you're going to be riding it, right? So yeah, do it in the morning if you can, because you're going to be hitting this thing about 7:30, 8 in the morning. Try to ride it at 7:30 or 8 in the morning. sometime earlier in the summer or sometime in the couple of weeks before the race. So absolutely agree. Now let's talk a little bit about how this part of the course gets broken up. I think of it as in almost as two different descents, Hadi. When you turn off of the Sugarloaf road, the Jeep road, you are turning suddenly downhill, and for, I don't know, about half of it, it's hard to measure, but it is rocky, chunky, bendy, very much four-wheel drive double track. And there is going to be a resorting effect on the field because good climbers have had their moment now, right? People like me have had chances to get in front, and all of a sudden there is a big descent where the good descenders are now getting their turn. And that is great. Everyone is great at different things in this race, and very few of us are competing against each other. So I'm not going to be throwing any elbows to the guys who are passing me. But if you are one of the fast descenders, make sure to watch out for the folks who are great climbers, but maybe mediocre descenders, and give them a shout. Let us know that you were coming by on our left. Tell us to hold our line. Tell us you're coming by on the right. Tell us whatever we need to know so that we can make your pass as clean and as easy as possible. Call it out, and remember one more time, we're dumb right now, right? We are all a little bit stupid because we have race energy. We have maybe a little bit of loopiness due to high altitude. We're at 11,000 feet. So if you can't make a pass that is going to be easy for you and the person you're passing, maybe give it a second and don't take it.
I think of the two places on the Leadville course where I'd rather have a full suspension bike, and it's here, on this upper section of the Powerline descent and the Sugarloaf descent on the way home. I mean, I think those are the two spots. And the reason is, again, this is a bumpy, rough section, this upper section up here, and line choice is premium, especially if you're on a hardtail. So that would be one thing. Yes, and there is passing here, and call-outs are absolutely necessary. Yeah, but don't. If you are being passed, the best thing to do is just hold your line and don't panic. It'll be fine. It's up to the rider behind you to get around. Just stay steady and they'll get around. If you're the passer, if you're passing someone, do so judiciously, do it quickly, get around and get out of the way, and thank people as you get by them. And then we're on to the second half, right? It's pretty obvious when the power lines, like we said earlier, get right above your head at this point, and you pretty much get a wide open look at the rest of the descent, which can be, the heart should be pumping there, right? As you look down this hill and you see this big swath of dirt. It's pretty obvious why it is straight. I mean, obviously the utility crews have cut this road right out of the forest to access the power lines themselves. I mean, hence the name of the trail and why you have this straight, long descent. Now, as far as the ruts, I mean, the storied ruts, and if you go back to the movies that were made, you're going to see these ruts, and you're going to see them in previous videos on YouTube from anything prior to, and correct me on this, I think it's prior to 2019 was the first year we saw the ruts gone, correct? They went up there and they graded the main power line, the bottom power line descent.
In 19, I was able to ride it without putting a foot down. So that was the year that it was graded. That's right.
And of course, that changed the downhill too on this thing. Now, the ruts are bound to come back at some point unless crews get out there and grade the mountain again, because rain is just going to have its way with this section of the course, and it's going to cut ruts into this trail that's going underneath the power lines. The water's just going to flow straight down the trail and start eroding new ruts in there. But again, like we said, there's not as many. They're not as deep as they were prior to 2019. But just stay up to date on this. In fact, Fatty will be reconning this for us when he does the stage race. He'll come back and tell us just what we can expect. You can build up a lot of speed here. And this is the time when you want to make sure your brakes are in good working order. This is why you should have good disc brakes in good working order.
Yeah.
But because at times you're going to need to pull on those levers and scrub a little speed, and you're going to want to be able to depend on things up there. It's loose over hard conditions in general up here, so grip it's there and then it's not. right? So again, watch that front brake. Watch that front wheel for washouts. You want to be just right with your modulation up here.
You absolutely do. And you never want to be going so fast that you can't bring it back into, to something where you can make a decently sharp turn. There is, in fact, one completely unbanked right-hand curve toward the end of the descent when you are frankly hauling ass that you will want to be able to bring your speed back under control so that you don't continue going straight when the trail has turned right. Be careful with that. And the trail does get super steep. For the final minute or so before you do a banked left-hander, it feels like you're practically doing a U-turn, but it's more of like, I would say, 140 degrees. And you blast down a very straight fence line. You are with that behind you, and you got to watch for ruts again on that very straight line heading down by the fence, because rain will cut a sharp, wheel-eating erosion line. Follow the line that you see, and because there will be good lines for you. People have been riding this trail for the days and weeks ahead of this race. There will be a good line unless there's been a rainstorm the day before, in which case all bets are off and everyone rides safe, right? But you are going to be seeing the famed creek crossing from the Leadville movies, except it's not something that you have to ride through or ride over anymore. There is now a pipe under the ground, and there is just a dirt road. To be honest, I'm happy about that. I hated having my chain be all gritty and gross for 85 of the 105 miles, and then a quick right-hand turn after a quick uphill, and that puts you on pavement. Take a big deep breath, because with any luck, you have just gotten down the power line unscathed. You're 23 miles into the race at this point. Just 82 more to go. Easy.
And on the next installment of the course, the best opportunity you'll have in the entire race to go fast while working smart. I hopped on the DNA Cycling website the other day, and I noticed something that is this. It has a decidedly dirty look. And I mean that in a good way. The homepage was filled with action shots of riders doing their off-road thing: gravel, cross, and mountain bike.
Yeah, I ride with those guys, and you are absolutely right. Dirt is right there in the DNA name. People don't always know this. Those letters stand for dirt and asphalt. Notice how dirt comes first. Plus, A&D doesn't really sound that good.
That's right. Dirt is more than just a naming thing for DNA. They've got the goods to back it up. Free ride baggies, adventure jerseys, tech tees, and a Cape Epic top. Yeah, DNA does dirt.
Yeah. On Leadville race day, you're going to want to wear something that looks more roady, let's call it. And there's a good reason for that. The road jerseys don't flap in the wind as much, and a good pair of Lycra bibs make for better leg movement and don't get hung up on the nose of your saddle, and keeping that chamois nice and tight will matter to your butt at the end of the day. But for those fun days in the dirt, DNA can kit you up as well. Head over to dnacycling.com and check out all of their off-road specific clothing.
And while you are there, maybe start planning a custom kit for your club or Leadville team. This is really what DNA is known for, and getting started now means you'll have it in plenty of time, not only for Leadville, but all your early season events. Again, dnacycling.com if you want to just shop, or if you want to start a custom order, or both.
All right, we've made it to the bottom of Powerline outbound. Second aid station is in our sights. Now, last time, as a reminder, we took you down the power line, outbound. If all goes well on race day, that's over in a flash. Don't worry, you will get another chance to look at this iconic segment of the Leadville 100, and when you do, you will have all the time you need to give it a good hard look.
We are now picking up at mile 23 as you make a right turn onto the pavement, but this is a good time, I think, for a quick overview of this part of the course, from turning onto the pavement to under the mat, just over 5 miles. What do we got here, Fatty? I mean, this is a pretty, on paper, kind of boring section, but we should really pay attention.
You definitely want to pay attention, because this, I mean, when you consider about 5 miles from turning off of the power line to going under the timing mat at the pipeline. That's 5 miles, but it's going to be both ways. And all of the guidance we have here applies in both directions. So that's 10 miles. That's 10% of the race. Now, in both cases, you're going to start this section at about 9,650 feet in altitude, and you're going to cross the timing mat at the same altitude. So a net difference of nothing. But you are going to continue to oscillate, let's say, 100 feet or so. You're going to be as high as 9,700. You're going to be as low as 9,600. So watch that. As you do the little ups, the little downs, use your gears so that your cadence, your power all stay the same, that you don't wind up blowing yourself up, for a quick 50-foot gain.
Mm-hmm. And as a typical sub-9 finisher, this 5 miles takes Fatty about 20 minutes to do.
Yep.
That really underscores the value of working with a group in this area.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. Want to see the numbers we're looking for at this part or any part of the course? You should check out Fatty's Strava for last year. It's easy to check. Just go to leadville.fm/Strava.
Yep. Made you a short little URL so you can check it out. And it is valuable to see just so you can wander through it and say, okay, here's a pretty, let's call me ordinary sub-9 racer. My numbers are pretty good to look at if that's the time that you are looking for. And anyone can look at it to kind of get a sense of, well, how much altitude is there between here and there and so forth. Anyway, let's talk about this part of the course. As we said a couple of times, it is very strategically important. It's 5 miles, and it is one of the very few places on this course where you can be going fast enough that wind resistance matters. You know how we were talking about being aero during that DNA ad read? It really does matter. 10% of the race is this section, and you don't want to waste your effort on wind resistance here. And besides, of course, wearing a nice tight jersey, working with people is going to be incredibly valuable in getting you from point A to point B as fast and as fresh as possible.
Mm-hmm. We hope you do find a group in this section, and that is the point of this whole discussion, is how to work with a group. But we'll say this real quick, and that is if you do find yourself alone on this paved section, or you're trying to wait for people to join you, or you're trying to catch up to somebody, focus on your aero position here, folks. You want to try to get down lower than maybe normally you would on a mountain bike or a piece of single track. So get your head down a little bit. Try to get your arms tighter if you can, and work on that aero position. And put on a DNA jersey, that BioFit jersey. It will help.
It does.
But hopefully what you're doing is getting in a group here. And this probably starts even before you've made the right turn onto the pavement. I mean, you're taking inventory of the people around you as you maybe run down that fence line and cross the area of what used to be a creek, and then climb right up out of that little lull right there and up onto the pavement. And you start taking a look around and see if there's people ahead of you or folks behind you, or maybe you've already got a group in this area. And you start to form a little group to work along the pavement. So let's talk about putting a good working group together, right? This is the number one most likely place to save some energy and make some time. Like, you can not only, work on recovering after this hard descent. The descent is not a rest area. The power line descent is not. I mean, it's work up there. So getting on the pavement and making the most out of your energy at this area, and also maintaining and rolling with a little speed is very important here. So again, let's look to do that as you work on this pavement section and hopefully form a group.
Yeah. Now, if you listen to, I think it was season 4, episode 21, my race day recap from last year, you'll notice that when I got onto that, I looked ahead and could not see anyone on the pavement. The way that I was able to form a group was by remembering that there was a guy just a little bit behind me. Of course, it's a race, and it is so hard to ever let someone catch up to you. You feel like you're giving something up, but you are definitely not doing that. If there is nobody in bridgeable distance, 50 feet, 100 feet or so of you, it is definitely more worth it to take a look over your shoulder and say, what if I let the person behind me or the people behind me catch me and I work with them? All of us are going to benefit. So definitely do that. Once you have put a group together, here are a few tips from Hadi and me on what you can do to make sure that that group stays working smoothly, efficiently, happily together. First of all, remember, this is a group of mountain bikers, right? You don't know for sure that the person you are riding next to or right in front of or right behind has any experience at all in working in a group. All you know for sure is that you have both arrived at this point in the race in the same, in the same amount of time. So you're more or less the same fitness, more or less the same strength. Right. So this is someone that you can and should work with. So Hadi, you ride a lot of road. What is some recommendations you would make to have a successful pace line in this 5 mile section of the Leadville 100?
Yeah, this is kind of second nature stuff for roadies. I mean, we ride like this all the time. And for mountain bikers, obviously, who ride more in smaller groups or 2s and 3s or alone, this is, can be new territory. I will tell you this, I've had a lot of luck in this section, or maybe it just happens quite a bit there, of finding groups. They seem to form quite nicely there. And if you pay attention, you should be able to jump in one and stay in one fairly easy. But there are some rules to live by here, right? One thing is that you want the group to stay moving. Like having one person sit on the front for the length of this thing is going to do nobody. It certainly won't do the guy on the front any good, and it's not going to do the rest of the group. This group is powered by each individual taking equal pulls. That's what does best. I will say this too. One thing to look out for: if you see a tandem anywhere near you, get with the tandem. These folks motor. You're talking about 2 bikes built into one. We have 4 legs on one bike, and they can really build up some speed. They do a nice job. They're generally great people to be around too. And they will help carry a group along. So find a tandem if you can. I know I've gotten lucky enough to find, I think on 2 occasions, tandems right in this section and stayed with them so they can help you. But again, I think the underlying theme here when you're working in a group is you want to pass the workout equally. Anybody taking a long pull at the front is only going to hurt the group in the end. And each person needs to understand that sitting in and not doing any work is not going to help the group, and going to the front and being a monster also does not help the group. You want the group needs to keep rotating.
Yeah. And what helps a group do that is having someone take charge, someone who sets the ground rules, so to speak. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you can happen into a group where everyone seems to understand what to do. More often, people are just looking for someone to say what they ought to do. I am happy to be that person and have had good success just in saying something very simple, like as I sweep people up, and as you get a bigger group, you will sweep more and more people up. Just simply say something like, take 15-second pulls, don't accelerate off the front, roll off left to the back. Just be the person who sets those rules. Most people are happy to abide by them because they know that they are now part of something that moves so much faster than they could ever do by themselves. Next point would be, as someone, finishes their pull and drops off to the back, be generous, be gregarious, thank them, say, nice pull as they do that. It is so easy to take just a second and appreciate folks for being part of something that is helping your race as well as their race.
Another hot tip, of course, is do not cross wheels. This can bring the whole group down. You want to be close to the rider in front of you, but overlapping wheels, it can get the whole group in trouble. If the person in front of you moves and crosses and clips your wheel, it's almost guaranteed you're going down. So stay close, but not too close is the idea. On the front, when you have finished your turn at the front, which should be no more than 20 seconds, you want to obviously signal to the group, the folks behind you, that you're moving off the front. That's usually done with a flick of an elbow. But you can just yell, I don't care, but do something. Tell the folks behind you, especially the rider right behind you, that you're going to pull off. So that rider is prepared to start rolling forward and take the lead. Now, as far as taking over the lead is concerned, there's no reason to accelerate. In fact, you're going to hurt the group. Accelerations hurt the group. If you accelerate and start picking up speed as you go to the front, that means everyone behind you has to do the same, and you start forming gaps in your pace line. Again, this is going to it's going to disrupt your flow on the pace line. So look down. If you've got a bike computer on, examine what speed you're currently rolling and just try to maintain that speed. That's all you're really trying to do. Again, this is why it's so important to not take too long of a pull at the front, because if you start taking too long of a pull, that means you're going to start reducing speed. The group's now going to start bunching up. And then when you do rotate off, the guy right behind you or the lady right behind you suddenly is fresh. They're going to accelerate. Now you're going to get this rubber band effect. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking just for nice, smooth, rotational matter here rolling down the road. And while there's a lot of focus on the front, the calling out, the signaling, and that forth, the person at the very end of the train also has a big responsibility here. The person at the tail end of the line, as the rider is backing down the line, in other words, the rider that just took the last pull at the front, as they're backing down, if you're at the tail end of the line, you want to tell that rider, hey, I'm last. I am last. So that rider drifting back knows, okay, I need to get back in the line. Because oftentimes, the hardest part about staying in a pace line is not doing the work at the front, it's getting back in the line, right? Because here comes that train, and you've been going backwards and losing speed, and suddenly you have to accelerate to get back in the line. If you can tell that rider, hey, I'm last, it's going to make it easier for them to fall back in.
And one last thing, and I don't think we can overemphasize this, Hadi, is the best way to get good at something is practice. Find group rides at your local bike shop or find other mountain bikers perhaps who would like to learn this and work with them. By doing this, you're just going to get better. It doesn't take a lot of time. We know that this is a mountain bike race, but there really is enough riding where you are working in a group in this race that having some experience at being able to modulate your speed without grabbing a handful of brake is a real skill worth having. Okay, so with that in mind, enough about groups. Let's talk about the mile-by-mile details of this 5 mile stretch of the course. So you would think, and I'm going back to where we are just turning off of the dirt onto the pavement. It's mile 23. You'd think that being who we are, we would encourage you to grab a gel, get a drink, instantly. But you would be wrong, because as soon as you make that turn onto the pavement, there's I don't know if it's 100 feet or 100 yards, but it is a nasty, sharp, steep little kicker that you got to hit. And maybe it just feels that way because your legs haven't really been pedaling that hard for the last 4 miles or so. But Hadi, you remember, I mean, you go from coasting to really having to hit it hard. Be sure to be ready to get into a lower gear. Don't eat quite yet, but then you're going to crest that in less than 1/10 of a mile, I will say. And then, yes, it is time for you to remember to get something to eat, because soon enough, you're going to be putting this group together. And when you're doing that, you're going to want to be watching, the back and butt of the next person, so that and grabbing a gel, grabbing a drink may not be as easy, at least for people who are new to working in a pace line. So grab yourself something to eat as soon as you get over that little kicker right after you get on the pavement.
At mile 23.8, you're going to pass the world-famous fish hatchery. Do not stop. Do not fish. You want to go right by this thing? As much as I love trout fishing. And it's quite a little scene in the fish hatchery if you do have time to go check it out. But not now. You're going to keep rolling here. This is a downhill, and then you're going to bend left. And now's the time. Go ahead, pull the gel out, grab the bottle, get a drink real quick. This is the straightest, flattest mile on the course, but you should be able to, if you've obviously practiced at eating and drinking while riding, this is a fine spot to go for that. And this is also probably the most perfect mile to start working together. Here's where your pace line should start forming up once you've kind of identified your gang. Here's where you can start getting to work.
Now, at mile 25, so just another mile or so, you're going to have a right turn. There's going to be a course marshal who is going to direct you for that. Now, often, I've seen this happen so many times, groups will break up here because some people coast as they make this corner. Some people power through. Some people take a very tight line. Some people take a wide line. It is easy to either lose people or get lost by people. So be ready, hold your speed and be ready to pick up your speed. If for some reason you do get shot off the back a little bit, make the extra effort to get caught back up because you have another 2 miles of mostly flat paved road now, which is going to take you to mile 27.
And at mile 27, you're going to make another right turn and back on the dirt. And I actually like this little double track section. It's kind of cool in there. It's not, it's not typical mountain bikey stuff. There's not any real hills involved, but it's a nice double track. For me, I could get why people don't like it too, because it can get a little rough at times and get a little roughed up depending on what ATVs have been out in the weeks or months prior. But there's room to pass here. It's kind of an unusual pass because it's dusty and powdery, and you got this kind of the center hump in the middle. So jostling between the two lines is a little awkward, but if you're a mountain biker, you can handle this. If you don't need to pass, maybe just hang on because soon you'll be getting into the graded fire road area, and you'll have a no-effort area as far as passing opportunities go.
Yeah, absolutely. When you get to mile 28, you are back on this wide dirt road. You're going to look ahead. You're going to see an arch. There is going to be a timing mat. Mile 28, you are just a couple of tenths of a mile away from the pipeline aid station. And when you cross that timing mat, might not be a bad time for you to look down and see how you're tracking against your hoped-for finish time. If you look at common finish times for sub-9, 2 hours is a pretty good guess. If you're finishing under 2 hours, you're in good shape, hopefully, if you can keep this up for a sub-9 finish. If you're at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, you're looking at a sub-10. If you are finishing in about 2 hours and 25 minutes, you're on track for a sub-11. And as long as you cross into the pipeline aid station in about 2 hours and 40 minutes or less, you are in great shape for your first or, second or third or 10th or whoever, however many belt buckles. So yeah, if the finish of the Leadville 100 is what you're after, target finishing at least or crossing this timing mat at around 2 hours and 40 minutes or faster.
This is the first crewing opportunity, by the way, folks. The first real significant aid station is right here at Pipeline. We're going to go into a whole show. In fact, we're going to have a whole show on crewing for race day, but it's a good footnote here about what you should expect, what you might see at this aid station. You could have a crew stationed here just in case you need something. Faster riders will just tear right through this section. They probably have enough to last them clear to Twin Lakes. But for other folks, and certainly my first time out at Leadville, I did stop here. I got my vest off, pulled some arm warmers off, may have dumped the bottle, can't remember for sure. But this is not a bad spot, especially if you go light away from the start line to pick something up. Fatty, how often have you been able to stay with your group? I mean, we talked about groups here coming on that pavement section. There is a chance to keep your group together here, even though Pipeline kind of naturally diffuses things. But I think this is still a good spot where if you can still identify a few riders maybe out of that big group that you want to stay with, you can do that here as we start to head down the pipeline.
100% agree. I don't understand why, but I swear I lose my group every time in the pipeline. I am trying desperately, honestly, to keep my group, but by the time I come through the crowd, it has just it's dissipated. And I am on my own. And I don't know if I have just sort of dropped back or if I have, most of them have stopped or if some people are just, getting their first pee of the day out of the way. But it seems like I lose people. However, on the other side of the pipeline, you are going to see people who either you have ridden with before or that you have not ridden with before. And you're going to be able to put together a new group for this next section very quickly.
And that is the next episode. We'll be heading from Pipeline to the second biggest party on the course, Twin Lakes Dam. That's on the next installment of the course.
Last time on the course, we took you from the bottom of Powerline to the Pipeline aid station. This episode, we are going to talk about from Pipeline to the next aid station, Twin Lakes Dam. And this is an important episode to pay attention to because it contains a section of the course that, as of last year, you're only going to see once during this race.
Let's take a big picture look at this segment first. Your goal on this segment, it's to cover the miles, obviously, but it's also to get to Columbine fueled, fresh, and fast. In that order of priority, do not miss the near constant opportunities to eat and drink on this segment, this pipeline segment to Twin Lakes of the course.
Yeah, that is one of the nice things about this segment. Most of it is not technical, meaning that you can eat, you can drink at pretty much any given moment. It is one of those rare sections on the course where you can use it to sort of preload yourself so that you are well hydrated, well fueled when you get to the bottom of Columbine, and then you're going to need both hands and all of your willpower to ride. We'll talk about that soon. For right now, a quick overview of this section. You are going from mile 28 to about mile 40. You are starting at about 9,600 feet in terms of altitude, and you are going to end up at Twin Lakes Dam at 9,285. In other words, over this 12 miles, you're going to drop a total of around 300 feet. That is not much of a drop, and you for sure are not dropping the whole time. And in fact, there are a few miles where you're climbing consistently. But on the whole, on the way outbound, you are going to be averaging down, which means you're going to be a little faster on this section going out than you are coming back. And that's a nice thing because you're going to be more tired on the way coming back.
Why do the downhills never feel like they're going down at Leadville?
They don't.
Except like Columbine, right?
Yeah. Oh, then you feel it.
Because, I think it comes down to the dirt out there. The pipeline dirt while overall we're headed down. Your wheels are dragging through some of this stuff, that loose over hard. Mm-hmm. There are some spots where you go down and come back up. So I think that's why we feel like we're always going up no matter what, even on the flats at Leadville. So let's break it all down. Again, it's straight and flat, or flat-ish, shall we say, coming out of the pipeline aid station. Actually, it drags uphill for a second, and then it really does flatten out. But it's never flat for long, so that's really what you want to be prepared for. When you think you're starting to get a little free run, just be ready to push down on the pedals again at some point. Good opportunities, again, here to work together. We kind of previewed this in our last episode of the course about how looking for a group as you come into the pipeline aid section. In other words, you've probably been working with a group coming off the pavement, and you want to either keep an eye out for those folks because obviously you've already made an alliance. If not, if you've kind of lost them in the shuffle coming through the pipeline aid station, then again, you want to be looking for a new group or a new person to work with. So again, good opportunities to work together, although it's also a great spot for mental support, right, Fatty?
Mm-hmm.
You've experienced this quite a bit coming through pipeline, both directions.
Oh, absolutely. Moral support is as good of a kind of support as getting a good draft. The fact is you're going to be going slow enough that maybe the aero advantage is not going to be that great. But working with someone and keeping each other fast, keeping each other fresh can be a good thing. That doesn't mean that you're going to be talking a lot because remember, you are never, ever below 9,200 feet on this course. You just don't have a lot of wind for conversation. If you have enough wind for conversation, maybe you should use that extra energy to take a drink and eat something. But that said, it depends on what you're there for. Right? If you're worried about cutoffs or a PR or a podium spot, you got to focus here. You're covering a lot of miles in this race. Otherwise, if you're here because you're excited about, a bucket list opportunity and you're close to this group that you are riding with, for sure, make a friend. And share the experience so far. It's some of my favorite memories of this race have to do with brief conversations I have had with other racers on the course. That said, when you're riding with a group, don't overextend and find yourself, barely hanging on. Remember what we said at the very beginning of this segment. Your priority needs to be to arrive at the base of Columbine fast, fueled, and with plenty of energy for that monumental climb at very high altitude that is coming up soon. So remember, so far you haven't really hit any of the hardest parts of the race. Soon enough, Leadville is going to earn its reputation as the highest and hardest one-day race in the country. So don't overdo it on this section.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice ride out to this point, in fact. And you've got the single track ahead, too, which I think is a great motivator. Like, you're kind of looking forward to that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? We do have some, kind of interesting back and forth here on the pipeline itself. There are some spots where you drop down, you make kind of a hard left at the bottom, and you come back up again. I think there are 2 of those spots as we head outbound on pipeline, right?
Are you talking about the technical descents, or? I'm
talking about there's a couple of spots where you kind of do zigzag on pipeline. I mean, you're going straight ahead towards Twin Lakes, in other words, southbound on the pipeline, and suddenly the trail turns right and drops, and it drops down to a low point, and you make a hard, almost a U-turn at the bottom, not quite U-turn, not quite a 180, and you turn around and you start coming back up towards, the main, what they call 130A or B down there. I think it's 130B. So there's a couple of these little zigzags on pipeline itself, and it calls for some attention too. I mean, you get some good speed going down, and you make kind of a hard left at the bottom, and you got to climb back out of them.
Yep. You do that a couple of times. And it is worth noting here, we talked about this in the last episode, but if you want to follow along on my Strava from last year's race, leadville.fm/Strava. And that will take you to my activity that shows my times and my track on the course, the altitude and all that. Pretty helpful if you haven't done this race before. Anyway, to round mile 32.6, and this is new as of last year, take a look to your left, because that is when that is the spot where you're going to be rejoining this trail when you are inbound, which at that point will be mile 70.7. For the next 3 miles, you're going to be riding this part of the course only on the outbound part of the race. And that is going to include the single track. It's going to include a technical little descent. So take a look at, from this point, think, okay, I'm not going to be doing this on the way back. And that is new as of last year. It will also be true this year, I understand.
Yes, that inbound segment, 68.3 to 70.7 is about 2.4 miles. On the map, they call that 136. Everything's got a number name out there because there's no real, right? We're talking about, we're talking about the valley section, what they call the western half of Leadville there. It's a lot of utility type area, so nothing has a true name out there. Everything has a number. So it's 136 out there if you want to look it up on a map. And that's a little connector road that you'll use when you're coming back home. And what Fatty's saying here is just take a note of it. You'll just want to see where it kind of pops in to that main pipeline trail that you've been on so far. Just take note of it. But you're going to blow right by it when you're going outbound, and you're going to be heading for the single track.
Yeah, that is going to be a trail and a tail, I guess, for another episode. There is, after you pass this place where you're going to be rejoining on inbound, that's when you're going to see the brief technical descent. It's, 100 feet, 150 feet? Hard to tell when you're just sort of bombing down it. If you have mountain bike experience, know this, it is not something to worry about. People call it Clavicle Hill and give it all kinds of spooky names. The fact is, it is a short, kind of loose, usually rocky, wide trail. So there are multiple lines, and I have ridden them with no suspension and with front suspension, and I guess with full suspension. The fact is that they are all rideable as long as you have some skill. If you are new to mountain biking, if you are coming into Leadville still kind of unsure of your technical skills, then by all means, move off to the right side of the trail, get out of the line, and walk your bike down. Don't end your race on this short descent. Don't be the person that this trail is named after.
It is one of those little sections that you just want to know what's coming up, and just get out of your saddle and move your butt back behind your saddle if you can, and bias your weight towards your back wheel. So move back, and get low, but keep your arms and knees flexed so the bike still has room to move underneath you. And obviously fingers, at least one finger on each hand on your brake levers, just in case. But you should be able to get about halfway down it, and then just let the bike run as long as you have a good line, and then chatter on down. There'll be a chatter. You'll be moving. It'll be fine. And then you're headed. Then now you have the single track. Nearly in sight. This is going to be the next kind of feature that comes upon you. The single track is actually a lot of fun. You do go through this little kind of tree section where there are some little roots you have to pull your front wheel over. So get ready for those. You'll know as soon as you enter the single track, you'll be headed for some trees, and just watch your front wheel, because you're going to have to pull your front wheel up a couple times to get over some trees, and then you kind of spit out of the trees, and then you start working the single track, and the single track will zigzag you down for the most part towards your next kind of paved rocky road section.
Yeah. And because different people have different strengths and weaknesses, there's a strong likelihood that you're going to wind up either being at the front or somewhere in a group coming down this part. There's going to be someone who is going to be slower than the rest and wind up being sort of a little bit of a bottleneck. Here's my advice on this. If you can pass safely, feel free. If you can't, and it would be a dangerous pass, then just be chill. You are going to be back on pavement and wide dirt road in just a couple of minutes, and there will be monumentally many opportunities for you to do all the passing in the world. But make sure if you do see a good pass that you call it out, over-communicate. That is always good advice at this race. And if you feel like you have sort of built up a bit of a train behind you and you want to let them by, let the person behind you know, say, I'm moving over to the right, come on by, and let them go. Just be aware that once you slow down or stop to let a person or a couple of people by, it's going to be difficult for you to get going again, because people are going to keep coming by forever. I mean, there are 15 or 1,600 people out on the course. It is sometimes hard to get going again on single track soon enough that you aren't going to bottle up a whole new group. So bias yourself towards staying moving on this section of the course is what I would say.
Yeah, and have fun. It's a fun section.
Yes.
It's just one of your few opportunities to enjoy a little single track. So enjoy it. I mean, have fun. Talk to yourself, sing. There's all kinds of fun things to do out there. It's a good view, too. Now, after the single track, you're going to hit pavement. At mile 35.6, you'll be at 9,284 feet, which is the second lowest point on the course. If you look to your left, that's where you'll be going when you're inbound. So this is the new section they have inbound to route people around the single track. They just couldn't have two-way. They couldn't risk people coming back onto the single track inbound with wave starts. They just couldn't risk it anymore. So the new route inbound will be right there to your left. But don't go left. Go to the right. And you'll see the road you'll continue on as you're headed for Columbine.
A marshal will point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be somebody at the bottom, guaranteed. There's going to be somebody at the bottom with a whistle or something in a vest telling you, go this way, go this way, go this way. And you're going to be headed towards Twin Lakes. Now, this is an interesting little section. This one knocked me over the head, I think, the last time I was there. So you're going to be climbing, coming off of the single track. You're going to be climbing this wide dirt road, about mile 36, and climbing a decent, what feels like a decent amount. Again, sometimes the numbers defy what you're feeling in your legs, right? It's 2.5 miles, and you're climbing 300 feet, but man, does it feel a lot worse than that?
It does, Hottie. When I was sort of previewing the course, looking at my Strava for, to do this, I expected a much higher number than just a 300-foot climb over 2.5 miles. Doesn't feel like it should be that much, but bear in mind, you've just come off a little while where you have been descending on single track. Your legs cool down fast in this race. They settle down, and it takes a minute for them to get going again. But they will. You're going to find a group very quickly, work with this group on this, sometimes very washboardy section, and, take turns pulling. Again, never take a very long turn pulling, but take your turn. And after you touch pavement again, there's usually quite a group of people there who I think are doing, maybe they're crewing for people. I'm not sure. Maybe they're just spectating. Regardless, there are quite a few people at about mile 38.5. That means you have crested and you have about a mile of downhill on pavement that is going to take you into Mardi Gras, basically, to the biggest mountain biking party you have ever ridden through.
Yep. At mile 40, you're going to cross State Highway 82. That's a fairly significant road in the valley down there. A policeman is always here, ensuring that you get through. Again, folks, you're going to want to be watching for the pros and the fast riders coming back home, especially if you're in the back, third of the race. If you started in white or maybe even a crowd in front of white, really start looking out for those return riders headed home, those fast riders headed home. And, there'll be a traffic cop here again, too, because as you cross 82, there is all of, a 20-foot piece of single track. But it is single track, and there's only room for one bike, whether it be going outbound or inbound. So you want to make sure that you have a clear path to use this. You cross 82 and it's right there in front of you. You're just going to drop. It's a little 20-foot piece of single track.
Yeah. And after that, you are in a dirt road that is lined on both sides of the road with cars. And these people are crewing for their racers. And before, Hadi, you started crewing for me, this is always where I had someone set up for me. It was a great place because it has the vehicle very close to the road so they can quickly on the inbound section get from there to the pipeline again. Now that we generally do sort of a zone defense as far as crewing, that isn't so important anymore. And frankly, I like where you have me crewed for at the Twin Lakes Dam alternate. That said, if you are a solo person crewing for a racer, this is not a bad spot to get you back out later. We'll talk more about that in our crewing episode. That is always a key episode for folks, so we'll get to that more. But be careful because there are a lot of people, even on this section, on both sides of the road, and they are watching for their racers. I have an amazing photograph of a good friend of mine who, as he was pulling in to be crewed for, a racer who was not prepared for that, actually grabbed a handful of brake, and I have an amazing photograph of him mid-endo here in this section. So it's something that you got to watch out for. Watch racers, watch people, and be careful.
Yeah, Twin Lakes feed is kind of broken down into two. You've got this section here that Fatty just described, which is just on the other side of the 82. Then you go across the dam itself, and then on the other side of the dam, you have this other long section of people feeding racers. And as far as this first section goes, the same applies regarding traffic. We're talking about, you could have people, you could have fast racers returning to Leadville, coming in here. And while they may be using, they may be on your left or would normally be on your left, they may try to cross over and reach a crew member who's actually stationed to your right. So just watch for that. Just heads up here. Watch for that cross traffic. The speeds here are good enough that a wreck would be completely devastating. So you really want to watch, for some of that cross traffic here. Then you're going to reach the end of this what we'll call the Leadville Feed Area 1, or the first section of the Twin Lakes Feed Area. And at the end of that dirt road there, you're going to veer right onto a very short section of, again, single track. Again, we're not talking about anything long here. But depending on your race place or your place in the race, you will either have a clear shot to the dam, or if you're in the back quarter of the race, one of the racers looking for a sub-12 or sub-13 finish, one of the really fast racers may intersect you here. So keep your head up. Watch and yield for other racers coming the other direction. It's not going to cost you anything. You could probably even keep your bike moving. If you just move off to the trail, say, for instance, somebody's coming your way, you can move to your right and go on the scrub a little bit and let that person get by and then jump back onto this little section of single track and head for the dam.
Yeah, these people that are coming back in the opposite direction, they are going at their absolute outer limit of ability. So expect them to be even more race stupid than you are. They are even more out of their head than you, if that is possible. So be kind to them, yield to them. They are having the race of their life if they are at that point when you are still on your way to the dam. So as we're now on the dam, and it is truly, it's indescribable. I'm going to tell you, it is a huge wall of humanity and sound and joy and excitement, and my energy level goes through the roof every time I go through there. Even though I don't know anyone there, they are cheering for you. I tell you what, you cheer back for them, and just watch the crowd go wild. It is an amazing opportunity for you to give out a little energy and watch it come back tenfold. because you're going to want that in just a couple more miles as you get through the Twin Lake Dam alternate and onto Columbine.
And remember, folks, it is on this section, so what we'd call Twin Lakes feed area number 2, or the second part you come to as you're outbound, that's where the timing mat is. So if you're starting to watch the clock a little bit as far as a cutoff time is, this is where you got to get. You have to get here and cross the timing mat there. And so just be aware that that's where the timing mat will be. And one other note, too, as you're crossing that dam, Fatty, they usually have some type of cement barrier in there. You have to kind of zigzag through to get through. So just a little quick, left, right to get through there. Then you're onto the dam. Then you're into the craziness. And again, hit that timing mat and you're all good. As long as Ken is not standing there asking for your timing chip, you're all good to go. Soak up that energy because you're going to need it. You're about to race the centerpiece of the Leadville 100. Maybe not the hardest part, but the centerpiece for sure. And that's the Columbine Mine climb. And that's what we'll be talking about next time on the course.
So last time on the course, we took you from the pipeline aid station to the Twin Lake Dam. And that is one aid station that doubles as a massive party.
Huge party there. We are now picking up at mile 40.7. A quick overview on this section of the course. Fatty's Strava for last year is an easy way to check out. Just go to leadville.fm/Strava. If you've raced the LT100 before, but not last year, pay attention to this episode because as of last year, this part of the course is much different than before.
Yeah, coming out of Twin Lakes Dam, you are immediately kicked in the teeth, as Dave Ween says at the beginning of this course segment every episode. You've got this short but very tough, it hurts, little climb on double track. About 200 feet of climbing in about a mile. And with a very memorable, you'll remember this, Hottie, about 50 feet. Super kick in the teeth, right at the top, right at mile 42. Have your granny gear ready because if you don't, if you are over-geared, you might find that you are underprepared for how much this little kicker hurts.
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly technical in here, so some boulders and rocks to kind of avoid, or picking a line to just keep your speed going. This area can feel especially hard because you've been descending and riding flats and possibly letting your legs cool down. Maybe you stopped at the dam and now you've got some effort to dole out.
That is right. So after you get to the short summit here, you have a rest for the last time in, frankly, a long time. You got a short but fun downhill, and that is about the same amount that you've just climbed, about 200 feet in about 0.4 of a mile.
Right. Now, let's look at the new stuff, this new workaround piece that we got as a present from Lifetime last year. So about mile 42.4, the veterans will remember, well, we used to go right and kind of climb up into those sort of foothill areas and move back and forth in there. In fact, there was a really old version of the course that kind of moved more towards the trees. But anyhow, you used to go right here at 42.4, no longer. Now you go left, right? This is because the race no longer utilizes a half mile or so of private property, which we could never use during our warm-ups. Like if you went out and recon this part of the course, this was always closed to you. Now you don't have to worry about not knowing a small section of the course because now it goes left and stays in what is essentially public property.
That's correct. You're staying on public roads. So at mile 42.4, you are taking this left turn and you have a straight, barely downhill, but downhill nonetheless, for about 0.8 of a mile. And then you are going to make a sort of right turn onto pavement, and that pavement lasts for literally 5 seconds or so. And then it curves around, you're back on dirt road again. Last year, and I hope they do this again this year, Cycles of Life actually had their van there where they were doing neutral mechanic support. So if by any chance you've got something that is kind of going wrong, this may not be a bad spot to get some help from some great guys who know a lot about bikes. Honestly, if you need neutral support, think about this right around mile 40, 43, 44 or so. Get some help from Cycles of Life. Good friends of the show there. Hopefully you won't need it.
Right. And after that 5 seconds on pavement, you make a right, and now you're essentially doubling back from the direction you just came. So you're going to be going westbound if you have a compass out, but you're going to be back pointing uphill briefly. So you're doubling back from the direction you came. And then about 0.7 miles, you're going to turn left onto a Jeep road. And this Jeep road looks a little familiar. First of all, there are power lines that go right down the stretch of it. Second of all, the condition of this road is a lot like the old section we used to pop out on when we came through the private property section. So it's a lot like that and feels a lot like that as you start to head for the main wide road that takes you up the Columbine climb.
That's right. And then this Jeep road goes for, this sort of dusty 0.7 of a mile, and then a right turn. And if you look up the road, and I do mean up, because you are climbing again, and you better get used to it, because you are going to be doing nothing but climbing for the rest of your life. At least that's how it's going to feel like. But anyway, you can see the Twin Lake Dam alternate feed zone. Look for Hottie. He's going to be waving you in, or he's going to be waving me in.
Yeah, and like Twin Lakes Dam, Twin Lakes alternate kind of has two sections. This Jeep road we described that kind of goes under the power lines, and when you make the right onto the main road, there are more feeders along both sides of the road there too. So there is not the chaos you see at the dam, but there's still a lot of activity here. So just look out for that, and look for people, obviously, who are going to be pulling over, especially on that tighter Jeep road. People are going to, if you're behind somebody, they could unexpectedly pull off to the right or even the left, going for their feed. So just watch for those folks as you're coming down that Jeep road, and obviously as you turn right onto the main road that'll point you towards the Columbine climb. You rejoin the traditional course at mile 45. You've definitely taken the long way around because, this is the same point that used to be at about mile 43.1. So here's where those added miles come in. This is why we have a 105-mile race now. So this course change has added about 1.9 miles to your journey to the base of Columbine.
Yep, and on the way back, it's going to add another 1.9. And for that reason, you add those two together, you got 3.8 miles, and they've shortened it in a couple of other places. One of them, we'll be talking about in next episode, your turnaround point is going to be a little bit sooner, and that is important. And that is, in fact, kind of good news, right? So this course change has put you on a little bit more fast dirt road. It's fast miles, and it puts you at the single lowest point you are going to be in the day. At some point, as you go by the bike shop van, you're going to hit about 9,250 in terms of feet. That's your altitude. That is still high. That is higher than most of us go most days, right? But adding miles at this lower altitude, and it is fast miles instead of this chunky, climby, mud hole riddled double track at the turnaround, which is what we used to have, is a trade you are going to be grateful for in about 7 miles. I promise. So at mile 45, you hit Twin Lake Dam alternate. If you're me, you pull over, find your crew, you fuel up, and you are ready for, in earnest, the Columbine climb.
You're on a wide, very wide dirt road at this point that has a name, and it's slipped out of my brain at this point. I just know where it is. I know how to drive there.
Is it Lost Canyon?
The Lost Canyon. You win the prize, Fatty. It is Lost Canyon. You're absolutely correct. This is the main drag. In fact, Lost Canyon is something you want to write down, because if you're going to send your crew out here, tell them to go to Lost Canyon. That's where they're going. So the Columbine climb starts essentially at mile 45 even. And this is the moment you've been dreaming about, right? Or dreading, depending on how you look at it. You're going to climb from 9,250 feet, the lowest point in the race, to 12,400 feet, the highest point in the race. Isn't that a joy?
It is. It is why we come do this race, right? If you had this exact same course and, starting from your hometown, Hottie, it'd still be a serious climb on the merits, but it wouldn't be something that everyone would do and, make a bucket list item. The fact that you were doing this incredibly difficult climb now at this altitude is what brings us all here. So you've got a turnaround point at mile 52 even. If you pay attention to your GPS, maybe you want to keep that number in mind. Your turnaround, we're always wanting to think Leadville 100, so your turnaround must be 50 miles, but it's the Leadville 105, and your turnaround is at mile 52.0. So keep that number in mind. And 3,150 feet of climbing in 7 miles. The fact is, in one single climb in this race, you're going to go from about 9,000 feet to 10,000 feet to 11,000 feet and then to 12,000 feet. And then you're going to keep on climbing. It's what makes this race unlike anything in the world. It is going to, at some point, crush your soul.
Yeah, so suffice to say, this is a lot of climbing over a fairly short section, at least as it pertains to the Leadville 100. 7 miles of 105 miles, and you're going to do 3,150 feet of climbing. That's a big chunk of your climbing for the whole day. And here's the deal with Columbine. I mean, at some point, it's going to punch you right in the gut. And it does differ from person to person. Everyone kind of has that altitude limit. And you're going to feel it somewhere along this climb where you're going to cross kind of this threshold, and suddenly you're going to feel like you're having the worst time ever. You might feel like a bonk's coming on. You're probably not going to want to eat, although you should. You might want to even sit down for a while. You shouldn't do that either.
Yeah, I see people doing all of these things, and I have done most of them myself. I have so many times just said, I'll eat later. I just can't eat right now. I am breathing too hard. I can't get something down. I'll drink later. I am not thirsty. I'm gonna stop here just for a minute because I am so tired. I need just a minute. Here's the strategy for succeeding on Columbine. 2-point strategy. First, don't give up. We seriously aren't kidding about all of these things, but the fact is 0 miles per hour does much worse things to your average speed than 2 miles an hour or even 1 mile an hour. If you have to get off your bike and walk for a minute, do. That is fine, but keep moving forward. Take comfort in this. Everyone around you feels exactly as bad as you do.
And here's the other thing. Number 2, don't stop eating and drinking. Yes, we say it all the time. Yes, it's tough on Columbine because you're going uphill and breathing hard, but you somehow have to at least keep taking in fluids and food. This is an opportunity to do that too, because you're not going fast. You're going to be going fast in a short while and not be able to do this. So now is the time to keep topping off those fuel storages. You're breathing hard, right? That's okay. Just try to get in what you can. If you don't fuel now, though, you're just lighting a fuse for self-destruction on this course. Fatty made this mistake like 14 years in a row. On his 15th year, he made himself keep eating on the Columbine climb, and he dropped an hour from his time and finished under 9 hours.
Yep. For 15 years, I tried to beat 9 hours. Couldn't do it. Couldn't understand why. The fact is, what it was is that as I made the call, as I did this Columbine climb, I told myself this very convenient lie: I will eat in a minute. You can't do that. You gotta. What works for me, and I think this is a good general rule. Set something on your GPS so that it reminds you every 20 minutes or every 25 minutes or every 30 minutes, or whatever you work out during your training. And it is a rule, not a suggestion. Time to eat, time to drink, keep some fuel in that pipeline. Otherwise, you are going to go from what feels like a bonk right now to what is a true bonk at around mile 60 in this race. It's an eating contest disguised as a race. It holds true here more than anywhere else. Okay, let's talk about the course. Right after Twin Lake Dam alternate at mile 45, the road bends to the left, and you're on the Columbine climb proper, okay? It is wide. It is generally really well graded. Up until around mile 50, it is not technical, but it is going to kick your ass. It shows you, right at the beginning, right after you make this left bend, that it is not fooling around. It takes a super steep turn. It takes this super steep climb for half a mile or so. It is 12% for a couple, for what feels like forever, but it's just less than half a mile. And it fools you into thinking that this is what it's going to be, that you need to back off all the way and stay backed off for the rest of the ride. That's not true. It is going to ease up.
But it backs off and you roll past a campsite and your legs will just start screaming here. just in time for it to kick up again. So look for the campsite. The campsite's your little warning that. And sometimes, Fatty, when you can anticipate the next tough thing coming up, that whole mental preparation really is a nice advantage to have. Yeah, it doesn't mean that Columbine gets any less steep, but if you know something's coming, you can get ready for it. So again, that campsite should be a little marker in your mind. Okay, there's the campsite. I know what's coming again. Another hard pitch is coming again.
And it also means that while you are at the campsite and it kind of bends and curves around, you have a minute to prepare, right? And that is sort of going to be the story of your life as you climb up Columbine. You have moments where you can recover. There are, I forget how many switchbacks, I think 8. I genuinely have never successfully counted them, even though I always start going, I'm going to count the switchbacks this time. Looking at the map, pretty sure it's 8 switchbacks in this 5 miles. And anytime there is a switchback, there is something very soon after that is going to give you a short recovery period. And, just do your best to give yourself, take those moments to eat something, to drink something, and to stay together, keep moving forward. It is so tough. I simply refuse to minimize this part of the course. It is difficult. It is why you are doing this, and it is going to be the test that you talk about when you tell stories to your friends at home.
Again, you're in the tree section here, folks. This is still all the beautiful aspen trees in here, by the way. So a very nice part of the Columbine climb. If it is warm out or, this is not a bad spot, even though you're going uphill, you will get some cover here, which is great. So let's talk about what you're going to see in addition to aspen trees and how to kind of act and behave during this section of the course. No matter who you are going to start encountering two-way traffic on this part of the Leadville 100 course, the Columbine climb. If you're one of the fastest riders, the fastest 100 or so, it's because you'll see people coming up while you're going down this section of the road. And of course, vice versa if you're outside of the top 100.
For the rest of us, you're going to have a front row seat to the pointy end of the race. And this is one of the things I love about this course. Seeing these incredible racers. I remember seeing Keegan Swenson last year as he was at the front of the race. And I don't think I've ever talked about this before, Hadi, but in the final switchback where there is some kind of mechanical equipment, honestly, I don't remember exactly what it looks like, but it's one of the last 2 switchbacks, I guess. As Keegan came down it, motorcycle in front of him, he actually rode up onto his nose, onto a nose wheelie, pivoted it around, and continued on down. That guy is a technical marvel. He is not just faster than a scalded cat. I was able to witness him actually playing a little on the descent on this course. You won't see many people doing things like that, but you are going to see some of the most talented, some of the fastest racers in the world, especially this year with the Grand Prix. But you're going to get to see who is in the lead at that moment and how close they have people on their tails. And it's a lot of fun. Take a moment, yell for them if you can, but more importantly, be sure you are far over on the right side of the road so that there is no chance of a collision.
Yeah, speeds are quite high here, especially for the folks going downhill. I've always seen I should say I've never seen a close call here, but I've heard of things happening. Things can happen, and that's why Fatty's advice to stay to the right when you're climbing or stay to the right, obviously, when you're descending is good advice. It is a wide road here in the tree section, right? So there should be no reason for interaction, if you will. But again, it's better to be super safe than really sorry. We'll worry about the downhill part for another time. For now, let's say you've survived to mile 50, you've broken out of the trees, and now you've got 2 miles of some riding and probably some walking to get to the turnaround, which is what we'll talk about next episode on the course.
Last time on the course, we took you most of the way up Columbine, the easy part, with easy in sarcasm quotes, for sure. It is important to know that as you look down at your bike computer and you see that you have hit the 50-mile mark, this grind is not over. In fact, the hardest part is right in front of you, and that's what we're talking about today.
Up until now, Columbine has featured some fairly smooth and good dirt road type stuff in a corridor with trees on either side. Kind of picturesque, kind of lovely, kind of nice.
Smells great.
Yeah, but unfortunately that ends now. Both the trees do and the good road.
Yeah. At mile 50, you are at 11,250 feet in altitude. You break out of the trees, and you remember this, Hadi. It is kind of an astonishing moment where you go, it seems almost in a matter of feet, from tall trees blocking, your view to the left and right, and it opens up. You've got an incredible view of the mountain. Pretty much no matter who you are, though, the altitude alone is going to have reduced your capacity to ride. So you aren't going to necessarily be thinking happy thoughts. You are going to be thinking, what is wrong with me? Where is my power?
Yeah, in pictures, you would think, oh, the angels are singing as you come out of this canopy of trees, and they're the puffy white clouds in the sky. And there's Ken Clover standing over the whole thing, harassing you as you try to climb up the goat trail, right? I mean, back in the day, that's what he used to do. He used to sit right at this section, strategic. I think there's a big rock there. He would sit on top of it and look down. There's Ken looking down at his minions as they attempt to climb up the goat trail. We don't know if Ken will be back there. We hope he gets back there soon, because that certainly is his spot in the race.
It is. There is no one I would rather be heckled by than Ken Clover. And he is quite a heckler. He has put me in my place when I've complained about the pain I was experiencing at that moment on that climb in that race. But this is, Ken or no Ken, an incredibly tough section of the race. I looked at my Strava from last year, and you can look at it too, by the way, leadville.fm/Strava, and that'll take you right to my Strava of the race. And there is a point, for 100 feet or so, you were at 23%. Hadi, you remember what I'm talking about. It is just no joke. A lot of people, most people, let's say, once you get past the first 100, 200 people in the race, need to get off and walk it. Or maybe you will ride it if you've got matches to spare. Good for you if you can. If you do need to walk, let me say, only walk as long as you need to. It is really tempting once you have started walking at any point in this race. This is not advice just for this spot, but it is particularly good advice for this spot. It is easy to keep walking once you've started because it is so hard to swing a leg back over the bike because you are so exhausted. Do it anyways. Once the grade lets up, get back on and go.
Another good point here about walking, and a lot of us are going to have to walk. This is a valuable lesson we got from the Queen of Pain, Rebecca Rush. She tells us to walk with purpose, right? For all but a few people at the sharp end of the race, you're going to have to do some walking here and maybe later. And that's expected. When you do, don't put your head down and just trudge. You're still racing, and you got an opportunity here to use your legs in a different way. This actually might freshen you up, in fact. So when you get back on the pedals, okay, maybe you've given those pedaling legs a little break, or those muscles a little break. So for now, use your walking muscles, but head up and act just like you're riding. Look down trail, think about what you want to do.
Yep. Think about the fact that you are working toward a red carpet finish in, about twice the time that you've been out so far right now. So yeah, keep going, go hard. One thing I always love doing, both at this spot and in the other couple of spots that I have to walk during this race, is I will sort of lean forward and use my, kind of put some weight on the bike as I walk and really put some stretch into my calves. I find that helps a lot with alleviating the twinges of what feels like an oncoming cramp, Hadi. We're going to talk more about cramping later in this episode, but having an opportunity to kind of use your legs differently, as you mentioned, can make a little bit of a difference. So don't also remember, as you are walking and you're marching with purpose, don't be rude, but also don't think that you have to just simply fall in line. It is okay to pass people on walking sections of the course. If you see someone and catch up with someone who is going a little slower than you are, be sure to look up the trail, Make sure nobody's coming straight down at you because you are in a two-way traffic at this point. But then, feel free to, say, hey, I'm going to come by you on your left. Communication is key everywhere on this course, but it is okay to pass. March with purpose, move fast. Don't let any moment be wasted on this course.
And of course, we've told you about traffic before. We're going to tell you again. This may be something you hear from us dozens of times during the course, but it's worth saying every time, and that is stay on your side of the road, which is the right side of this. It's just like driving, folks. Stay to the right, especially in this area. You've got two-way traffic. It's tighter than it was down in the lower section of Columbine. Now you've got faster racers for certain coming down. They are going to be bouncing around a little bit because this is a rougher section. This Goats Trail section is a rougher section of Columbine. So you're going to want to count on two-way traffic, and you want to, even though you're walking, moving slow and maybe slogging and tired, you want to focus on what's coming at you too, because there could be some danger.
And for sure, everyone is just a little bit stupid right now. It is that simple, right? Everyone is above 11,000 feet and then above 12,000 feet. You are exhausted. You are not thinking at your best. So just keep it simple, stay to the right, yield when you need to, and be kind. There are lots of good opportunities to be nice on this course. Use them. So you've made it past this slap in the face, maybe ridden, walked by Ken Glover. You've had a chance to recuperate comparatively, because this section, after this 100 feet, 200 feet, that is incredibly steep, you're still climbing. But at around mile 50.3, you are going to split. That is, descenders are going to be coming on the left side, your left right now, and you, as a climber, are going to be going right. So, different trail, and that alleviates some of the anxiety that you may have about, racers coming down much faster and on, bumpy, rocky road as you are either walking or doing your best to ride.
Now, as memory serves, and I haven't had a chance actually to ride this section because my section was back in the old days, pre-2019, when we all just kind of stayed side by side. In other words, the cross traffic was right next to you on your left, but this split is new, probably around 2019. The truth is, no rider is in their right mind at this point, so different trails for different directions is nice. I mean, getting some separation from those people bombing downhill is great.
Yeah. Now, when you split, when the trails split and you veer right, it's another very, very tough section. My Strava says that it is about 17% briefly. Luckily, that's only briefly, but it is really hard. There are going to be some of you, some of me, just depending if I'm on form or maybe if I'm not on a single speed, I might be able to ride it. Most of us are going to need to at least get off for a second. But it only lasts for a couple of minutes. And then, and this is sort of a recurring theme with Columbine, there are recuperation opportunities. Most incredibly steep moments are followed by something where you have a chance to pull yourself together and either get your leg back on the bike or to spin a little bit and get some of that lactic acid out of the legs.
So the two roads, the split roads, become one again, and you resume normal two-way traffic again at about mile 51, and you've got two very steep hike-a-bikes, at least for most of us, ahead of you in the last mile before that turnaround. So this is a challenging section to ride. Fatty, have you ever cleared these?
I have not, Hadi. No, that's not true. I have cleared them, but not on race day. I've cleaned them at other times. And the difference in how it feels during a pre-ride and how it feels on race day is incredible. The amount of fatigue that you've accumulated at race pace in 51 miles is just incredible. I don't worry about clearing it. I don't care. In fact, I often will roll right to the bottom and swing a leg over and go right into the march instead of, trying to ride to the point where I stall and have to get off. I find that the amount of accumulated pain is much less that way, and I don't think that I'm wasting any time. How about you? Have you ever been able to ride this either during the race or not during the race, be able to clear these two very steep sections before the turnaround?
Yeah, in the 2011, I had the legs to do it. I know I did. It was just too much traffic. So traffic forced me off. but I was doing great on the climb. Even those rough sections, those loose sections, I was doing quite well. Just too much traffic, so I had to get off. Because when I was moving around people, and you can do that if you're careful about it up in this upper part of Columbine. But again, at some point, you've got people coming down, you're trying to dance around people going uphill, and it becomes too much, right? And you might as well just get off and settle into a good walk. And who knows, maybe you can walk around people too. That's completely possible if you've got folks in front of you who are going that slowly. So once I had the legs to do it, and then all the subsequent times I've been up on Columbine, I pretty much, I think, thought, you know what, this is a walking section. I'm resigned to that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become the best walker I can.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You know, that's like what Rebecca Rush says, walking with purpose, right? Now, I know that Melissa last year in 2021, she did ride the whole thing. And that is definitely in sort of in sync with what you were saying. Because she was at the pointy end of the race, because she started from the very fast corral and is a very fast racer, she rode the whole thing. She had she had a clear shot and the legs and lungs to do it. Most of us are going to need to walk it. That is fine. That doesn't mean you can't use this as an effective moment during the race to eat something, right? You have a free hand while you're pushing your bike. Open a gel, get it down. You have a free hand. Take a good long drink. You have people in front of you and behind you. Make allies, make friends. That's kind of what this race is about anyway. And finally, this is one of the things I love about the race. You will have racers coming at you in the other direction. Cheer for them. Others are going to do the same for you, and it is going to make you feel like $1,000,000 when you are on your way down. So absolutely cheer for the racers. Doesn't matter whether you know them or not, who are coming down because they've done something big and important, and you are too. And it is awesome to sort of, cheer each other on. And stay right.
And stay right. Again, you want to stay to the right. And once you finish these big hike-a-bikes, you're almost at the new turnaround at mile 52. This is the emotional point, the high point of the race, maybe second only to the finish. And again, a new point. We used to ride much further and actually descend a little bit and have to turn around and ride out of a pit. A little better now, right? Also, this is a beautiful spot, big open view of the entire area around you. You're at the southernmost point of the Leadville Trail 100 at this point, the highest and southernmost point of the Leadville Trail 100. You're going to peel right. This is kind of a big turnaround, and there'll be a volunteer there likely trying to hand you a gel or a water or a Coke or whatever you might want. And then a quick left and another quick left as you start pointing downhill. So give us, you've been up there though, Fatty. You've experienced this in a race situation. Give us the ins and outs, the plus and minuses of this turnaround.
Oh, I prefer this turnaround by a lot. The fact is, you were turning around at the point that you used to just turn left and then kind of go over that rocky and sort of mud hole riddled flat section, and ending by the little dip into seeing the cabin, which was always kind of cool. But then you got to climb right back out of it. It is nice to instead just do this sort of 100-foot counterclockwise triangle, be handed a couple of things, and then you are well and truly heading downhill instead of, after doing all this climbing, doing a couple 100 feet of descent and then having to do that same 100 feet uphill again and then riding flat and then doing descent. So this is where things have changed for you a little bit. This used to be what I would call an even split race, that your turnaround time was half of your finish time, more or less. Some people are faster at the beginning, some are faster at the end. But I would say now, because of the change in course in the other places, as well as especially right here, this is a negative split race now. You are going to, for me at least, I turned around at 4:30, I think on the nose last year, and I finished in 8 hours and 40 minutes. So 20 minutes faster on the return trip. significant.
And we used to sit here and tell people prior to this new turnaround, do not stop at the turnaround at the halfway point. Keep going. It's less of an issue now because you're not down in that hole. You don't have to climb out of something after that turnaround if you come to a stop. What do you think? I mean, is that mitigated now? Can people, if they had to like go to the bathroom real bad or needed to stop for some reason, they could kind of pull it off here, do you think?
If you need to take a leak, fine. Great idea. There's no trees for you to go behind, by the way. You are well above tree line. But yeah, if you need to take a leak, fine, whatever. If you want to top off your bottles or your hydration pack, if you want to get something to eat, I think all of those things are fine. Those are things you need to do in order for you to stay fast and fueled on your bike. If you are stopping just because you are out of breath, you're at 12,400 feet and good God, I simply can't breathe and need a second to pull myself together. No, get back on your bike and head downhill. This is not a place to catch your breath. This is a place where you get what you need, you turn around and you get going downhill. Your legs are going to have a chance to come back over the next 8 miles. Your lungs are going to do better, astonishingly fast as you shed thousands of feet in altitude over the next 8 miles. It's incredible.
Right. So if you stop, make it a quick one because it is, you're going to be back with your crew in fairly short order. So just a quick stop if you absolutely have to. Otherwise, try to keep rolling. Make that left and get the hell out of there. Get down that mountain, which is what we'll do on the next episode of the course. It's the bomb down Columbine. It's a good thing we're on NV wheels because that Columbine climb is one tough dog. Fatty, we talk a lot about aerodynamics on our other podcast and how big a deal aero is, but it can't be ignored, especially on Columbine. Weight does matter.
Oh, it does. Anything that you're going to bring down, you got to haul up. That's why I went for the lightest offering NV had at the time, an off-road wheel. Now, this was not a conventional choice, but it is one that definitely worked for me. I grabbed a set of NV G23 rims, put some mountain bike hubs on them, and I had a fast, light bike setup. Now, G's for gravel, so NV's real intention is that the G23 wheel set is ridden on a drop bar bike. But I just couldn't ignore the spec sheet on that wheel set, the weight in particular. Depending on hub choice, the G23s can weigh under 1,300 grams.
Yeah, Envy would rather you run the M5 wheel set, Fatty. M is for mountain, and that is largely due to the wider internal width on the M5 at 25 millimeters. It will behave with mountain bike tires a little better than the Gs, but hey, I have the G23s as well, Fatty, so I know what you are saying. They are light and really fast.
Now, I will say, for what it's worth, I will be on M5s this year. And you can learn more about NV's carbon wheels, whether G23s or M5s or any of their other great wheels at NV, that's ENVE.com. All right, let's see how well those NV wheels descend. My guess is really good. Here we go. High-speed downhill of Columbine. Last time on the course, we took you to the turnaround, and we're just going to leave you there. No, just kidding. We wouldn't do that. Today, we are actually taking you from mile 52, the turnaround, and we are going to take you a pretty fair distance down.
Right. But you've already done more than half the effort, actually. This race is a negative split race.
Yeah.
Meaning that the second half of the race should not be as hard or take as long as the first half.
Yeah, that should be encouraging to our listeners because at the point you turn around, it is really easy to wonder to yourself, is this really just the halfway point? Because every time I think that, I'm exhausted and I feel like, oh no, I do not have it in me to do this effort again. But you don't have to. Think about the hard climbs of this race and which are behind you and which are in front of you, okay? St. Kevin's, check. You've done that. You don't have to climb that again. Hagerman's and plus Sugarloaf, we tie those together. Check. You are not going to have to climb those again. You are going to descend them. Columbine, guess what? Check. You just finished climbing that. So there are really 2 climbs left for you. There's Powerline, and that's a biggie, and there are May Queen. We are going to talk about both of those, so those don't have checks. But make no mistake, 3 of the big climbs in half the distance means that you are, if you play your cards right and still you've been eating and you've been drinking, you're going to be able to finish the second half of the race a little faster than you did the first.
We bring this up because it's easy to feel at, when you're at 12,400 feet, that this is all too much and that you don't want to do this anymore. That's just exhaustion and altitude talking. This is no place, though, for introspection or reprioritizing family over your selfish hobbies. It's time to execute. Specifically, do these 4 things as you start pointing your bike down Columbine and back towards the Twin Lakes Dam. First of all, you want to get down off the mountain. I mean, that's job 1, right? That's the big deal in front of you here. Get down in one piece. If you can, even though the speeds are high, we're going to keep pressing these 2 main points that we've talked about, I think, since we left the start line, and that is to drink and to keep eating, right? Because, again, you're not going to be breathing as hard. A lot of concentration required here, but there are going to be some opportunities as you're going down the mountain to take in calories and take in fluids. And the third thing to do, and if you're lucky enough to do this, and that is to cheer. I mean, as you go down, hopefully you're part of the group that has made the turnaround, and as you're going down, you're going to still see people coming up the mountain, up Columbine. So one of your jobs is to keep the love going. You got it going up, right, Fatty? And you want to give it back going down.
Yeah, it is. It's a virtuous feedback loop, and it can get you out of the little funk that you have. And I mean, all the things Hadi said are absolutely true. In addition to, getting down the mountain because you're in a race, you're also wanting to get down off the mountain because you're at 12,500 feet or 400 feet, whatever the altitude is. GPS is a lie. But you have 3,000 feet of descending you are going to be doing over the next 7 miles. Gravity, which has been your enemy for the last little while, is now suddenly, in a big way, your friend. But only to a point, right? The first mile of this descent is technical, capital T technical, for 2 reasons. There are a lot of loose rocks, and it is tempting to switch lines because of that. But you are on a 2-way Jeep double track trail, so you cannot switch lines. So, safety above speed. It is super common out there to see someone who has been racing with, promising day ahead of them and crash out there. Don't take the gamble that some people have taken and take themselves out and other people out. It won't buy you much time, and it could cost you, as well as other racers.
Yeah, this descent, actually, we mentioned the video from Nick, and he shows all of this descent, which is great. This top section we're talking about, this Jeep trail section, which, as Fatty told you, is the sketchiest part of all of it, especially about a mile after the turnaround. I noticed at the top part there, Fatty, right after you make the turnaround, you start making the descent. It doesn't look as bad as I recall it from years past, back when we did the old turnaround. But about a mile after that turnaround, as you're going down, the trail does split, and you kind of remember this from going up. Going down, it splits, obviously, so you'll be to the right here, and you're on this section, which I found to be, at least from the video standpoint, to be the roughest section so far. Like a lot of boulders, a lot of rocks. Now, the good news here is you're in the split section, so even though Fatty told you hold your line in the Jeep trail, this is a section where you can choose one side or the other of the trail when you're on the split section. So really pay attention to the rocks, the boulders, and the proper line as you head down the split section of the goat trail.
Yeah. And that split section, boy, I always breathe a sigh of relief there. Just not having someone to worry about who's going up when I'm going down is a relief. So once after that first mile and you split and you've got about 4/10 of a mile, then you are back together. And you are on sort of a wideish dirt road, very steep, with lots of loose rocks. So pick a good line, watch for outbound racers on foot who could be confused, or if they are riding, they could be, sort of pinballing a little bit off of those boulders and not be in 100% control of their line. So everyone should always take care of not encountering other riders. We don't want to overemphasize this to the point where it's starting to get freaky, but it is something to point out. You're going to be fine. Just take it easy, take it safe. Don't get a flat. Don't break your rim.
Right. I mean, look, folks who climb Everest will tell you this about descending too. Getting to the top of the Everest is great, right? And look, getting to the top of Columbine, you feel great. It's euphoric. You're glad you got up there, right? But Everest climbers will tell you it's the first few steps going down Everest that can be the most dangerous part of the climb. And that the analogy kind of works here with Columbine too. Like, you're going to feel great that you reached kind of the quote unquote halfway point, even though you're a little farther than that at this point. But you really want to watch it as you start coming off this climb here. Again, like Fatty said, watch your line, watch the traffic when there is two-way traffic. And when you get in the split portion of the trail, again, you're going to have a little bit more room to operate, but probably you're going to find a sloppier trail in that area too. Now, at mile 54, the road becomes wide and fast. Now you're headed back to that tree canopy section, and you got 5 really fast miles ahead of you. Remember, you got those hairpins down there. There's still reason to concentrate here, even though the trail has gotten wider and smoother. You've got some hairpins ahead of you, some brake bumps. That's kind of that washboardy stuff where other people have braked, some erosion ruts to watch for. Quote unquote baby heads, as we sometimes like to call them, where you've got partially covered boulders that are on the Columbine ascent. Hopefully you took note of those on the way up. And of course, you're cheering the racers working their way up the mountain too. So even though it's wider and faster, and yeah, you're going to try and carry more speed and make more time here, there are a few little things to be aware of as you make your way down the tree line area.
But that 5 miles is going to go fast. There will be opportunities. You'll be able to see far enough ahead that you'll be able to go, you know what? I think I can grab the nozzle on my hydration pack and take a couple of good hard pulls at that. I think I have enough time to pull out a gel flask or a goo and suck half of that down and, get it back into my jersey pocket or, into the side panel of your DNA, your DNA bibs, plugging our sponsors there. But around mile 59, it's all going to be over because you're going to break out of the trees, you're going to take a right bend, and you are at the alternate feed zone. Just 46 miles to go.
Not bad. By the way, if you're coming off the Columbine descent, you're probably going to see water bottles all over the place. It's a good place for the high-speed guys. The bottles get jettisoned out of the cages. And if you lose a bottle, if you got another one in your cage, don't worry. You're going to be back at your feed zone fast enough. Don't try and stop and turn around. Just leave the thing out there. There's cleanup crews that'll come by and come get it for you. It's an accident. It's not like you purposely chucked your bottle. But you will see bottles on the descent. You just want to watch your wheels for those. Those can cause a real mess. So look out for those.
Yep. And don't chuck your gel packets out on the ground, right? Let's not leave a mess. So we're going to keep chipping away at the final 46 miles in the next installment of the course.
Well, last time on the course, we started at the turnaround at the top of Columbine and rode you through the 7 miles that gets you to Twin Lakes Dam Alternate Aid Station. Today, we're headed from the alternate aid station to the single track bypass from mile 59 at 9,500 feet to mile 68.3 at 9,350. That's 9 miles and a net descent of about 150 feet.
Yeah, so it feels like if you were to think of it as just a single decline, that you're just sort of rolling downhill, but you are not. There's going to be some fast, mostly flat miles, but you are also going to be doing some hard climbing and some fast washboardy descending in this 9 miles. So it's strategic, like all of the race, and you want to pay attention.
Here's our ongoing message, by the way, folks. Whether or not you use the Twin Lakes Alternate Aid Station, use the couple miles after Twin Lakes Alternate, this new private property workaround area, to do what?
To fuel. To hydrate.
To fuel and hydrate. That's right. The thing we've said over and over in the course. The course is not only a description of the course, it's an instruction manual that you must fuel and hydrate every chance you have. Of course, these are straightforward, flattish miles, and you will be climbing hard again as soon as you get through Twin Lakes Alternate. So use this opportunity to do what?
Yeah, you are going. We're not talking about the Twin Lakes Alternate. We're talking about the Twin Lakes proper aid station in this case. But you are going to want to get your legs going again, eat something, drink something, and it is going to feel good to sort of start spinning, start applying some pressure again because your legs have cooled down a bit.
At mile 61, you'll make a right to rejoin the course as it was before the private property reroute. And there's a grunt of a climb here on a rocky Jeep road for a couple hundred feet that's going to remind you that you are What? In a mountain bike race. Yes, this is a mountain bike race, even though you've kind of been on some dirt roads and even a bit of pavement. You are in a mountain bike race, and this rocky Jeep trail is there to prove it to you.
Yeah, it is going to hurt a little bit. You are going to start feeling every climb for the rest of the race. This doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It just means that you are, in fact, racing the Leadville 100. So you're then going to, after cresting over this, you're going to descend on rocky Jeep double track. Make sure you pick your line carefully because some of these embedded rocks can definitely start pinballing you off the course. You don't want to do that, but you are going to descend quickly into the Twin Lake Dam proper aid station. And it is time to wave to the fans because you are back at the big party.
Yeah, you'll probably hear them before you see them. All the people at Twin Lakes Dam, it really is a party there. They've been there a while, and they just love seeing every racer come through and show your appreciation back for them, too. They've been standing around, some of them in their goofy costumes, some of them out in the sun. So, have a look, have a wave. If you need to stop, if this is your stop point, make sure you find your crew and do that. And, you'll be amazed at the morale boost that you get as you're rolling through this area.
Yeah, you really do. I always love coming through every single one of the aid stations, but the Twin Lakes Dam aid station is something special. It is unlike any other mountain bike aid station I've ever been through. So after you get through that, after you finish crossing the dam, there are a couple of cement barriers that have been placed. You have to weave your way around them. And the gravel here for just 50, 60 feet is very loose and deep, and it is real easy to wash out. So, watch your front wheel, get through that, and then you are going to make a quick left onto a short section of single track that connects the dam road into the sort of pre-Twin Lake Dam crew dirt road. If you're pretty far forward in the race, you could have racers coming at you in the other direction who are still outbound. I'm pretty sure that they say outbound has the outbound has right of way. Or no, is it in? No. Yeah, I'm wrong.
I would think it would be, I don't know because I'm never fast enough to find out, I guess.
I'm pretty sure that the marshals are going to make sure, and control traffic. I think inbound might have the right of way.
Right.
But usually the fact is, the two of you can work around each other. Use the overarching rule. Be nice. Everyone is trying to do the same thing, which is have an amazing day and get to that red carpet.
Anyway, after that soft section, Fatty described in the little ribbon of single track, you're going to pop out and you're going to be into another corridor of race crew, a lot of vans, a lot of people. So this is like the second half of the Twin Lakes Dam feeding area. Watch for racers, of course, re-entering the race as well, as they may be stopped here to pick up a feed, and they're going to jettison right back out, possibly in front of you as you're trying to just make time through here. Give way to a quick 10 steep connector road. What's coming up next is as you exit this area, the second area of feeders at Twin Lakes Dam, you're going to make a slight right and jump onto a quick, short, 10-foot steep connector, a little section of single track that'll pop you out onto a road. A traffic cop should be right there to help you cross the road. As this is Highway 82, by the way, you're going to cross the road and start heading up in a second here on pavement.
Yeah, up is the key word here. It is time to climb again. And you're going to be on pavement. And this is, at least in my memory, a really tough one. The day, if it's going to be warm, and it frequently is, this is where you're going to really start feeling it. I don't know if it's that the heat is radiating up, from the black tarmac, or the fact that you are completely exposed and the sun is right on top of you and you're in the heat of the day. But I always feel it here, Hottie. Also, it's the first sustained climb you've had since Columbine, right? And you are going to be noticing now how tired your legs are. I think isn't this the place where you and I actually ran across each other one year when both of us were riding it? And I remember both of us were suffering at the moment. I think I was eating a gel. I think you were eating like some kind of pastry or something.
That's a good one. I don't recall that. I do recall meeting you up on Powerline headed in one bound. I don't recall this, but again, we're all brain dumb.
Our memories are tricky.
Talking about 10,000 feet, right? Who can think? Who can remember anything?
Oh, it's true. It might have been you. It might have been Sean. I'm now thinking, it might have been Sean that I came across there. Anyway, it's always fun to run across someone you know. If you see someone in a Leadville podcast jersey, please give me a push just for a second. Appreciate it. So, honestly, for years and years, it was this 1.5 mile, 300 feet of climbing. It's not that big of a deal, you wouldn't think, but it was this stupid climb that I would self-destruct on every year because it was here that a dumb decision I had made earlier in the race always manifested. That is, because I, like a lot of racers, hate eating when I'm on the Columbine climb where the altitude is just getting to you, I'm paying the piper now. Right. And for the rest of the race, because fueling I didn't do 20 miles ago is now coming to bite me in the butt. You're out of fuel. Once I figured that out, this climb stopped being, stopped feeling like a wall and became what it is, 1.5 miles, 300 feet of climbing.
Once this hill is over, we'll call it Fatty's Bonk Hill. Once this thing is over, you're going to crest at the top here of the pavement. You see some people out at the top here. I think they're locals. I don't know. They're spectating. They're always there, cheering, usually sitting down in their chairs. They don't do feeds. They actually, technically, by the rules, are not supposed to give out feeds here. Like, this is not supposed to be a stop area. So if you're thinking about putting a crew here, don't. You could run into some issues. But if some citizen, somebody just who happens to be, wants to hand you something, you can go ahead and take it and keep on going. And then you'll be back on dirt. It's a downhill, but it's washboardy. Right, so pay attention, obviously, loosen, you want to, go with the heavy hands, or rather the other way around, light hands, heavy feet, try to, get your weight over your feet and loosen your grip as you can so you don't just chatter all the way up your arms and into your shoulders. And this is also another great spot to work with people if you can find someone who is in a similar state as you.
Yeah, and that can be a real trick. I have had people who go flying by me because they've, sort of hit their steady state and, they are the power riders who can just go right by you. I have caught up to people who, we were at the same point in the race right then, but they are bonking and I'm feeling okay. It's finding someone who is, more or less gone the speed you have and has the same amount of power you do right now is difficult, but it is worth it if you can do it because you are going to be connecting up in the next time that we talk about the course for some pavement where having a pace line can really make a difference. You won't be there for long, but it is flattish pavement and working together, as always, can, earn you a few calories of effort and a few seconds on your time. And sometimes that's all it takes.
And we'll cover from here to the pipeline aid station next time on the course. Now, last time on the course, we brought you to mile 68. That's just over 2/3 of the race in terms of distance and effort. You're on one of the short stretches now of pavement here. And up until last year, you'd be making a left turn and heading back up the single track, but not now.
Nope, that is no longer the case. One of the ripple effects of the wave starts is that racers are strung out over more of the course for more of the day, and that means an increased likelihood of outbound and inbound racers being on the single track at the same time, if we were on the single track at the same time, which would not be good for anyone. So Lifetime has gotten around this problem by having inbound racers stay on the road. You're going to go straight instead of turning left for this additional 0.7 of a mile.
Yeah, this workaround also shortens the trip home to Leadville, both in distance and difficulty, which is good unless you really like going uphill on single track late in the day. Because, of course, that private property workaround earlier in the race has added some distance and time to your day. Here you get some of it back. This straight, flat paved road is definitely a more direct line toward pipeline. It's going to help you get that negative split on the second half of your race.
Yeah, and all three of those key words are really your friends. Straight, flat, paved. If you are engaged in any kind of race strategy, this should be music to your ears, because it is about a mile-long opportunity for you to work together with your fellow racers. It is not a long section, but you're going to be tired when you get here. You have been going for 68 miles, and every little bit of cooperation that you can find is going to help you and your friends, your racing friends, get to the red carpet that much sooner.
All right. At mile 69, you'll turn left onto some Jeep double track. This is a new section now. Well, we've been on a new section. This is yet another piece of new double track that you probably have not seen yet unless you raced last year or unless you went out and pre-rode the course. It's fast rolling, though definitely dusty. It's been dry in Leadville, which it usually has been. Look for dust here. You'll be climbing steadily for the next 1.5 miles on this section of the course. It's a pretty gentle grade, 2 to 5% most of the time. You're headed straight for Pipeline, so you'll be going up about 300 feet or so on this segment. But nothing feels easy anymore this far into the race. I mean, even 2% feels pretty awful. And it's open and exposed, so you'll really feel the sun on you unless it's raining, which could happen.
One of these years, it is going to be a rainy year. It is going to be a rainy day at Leadville. I mean, we talk about bringing gear when we're in our DNA ad spot. It really is worth noting that, I mean, if you come to Leadville for a week, on one of the afternoons, you're going to be dumped on. We've been lucky, it seems like, for the last decade in terms of having a lot of rainfall on us. I don't think it's been since like the year 2000 that we really got drenched. It's going to happen one of these years. Be ready for it. But that's a little bit of a diversion, but one worth noting. At about mile 70 and a half, you're going to take a sharp right. That is, it's an actual acute sharp angle. It's going to put you back on the traditional road, back toward Pipeline, and it's an immediate uphill just for a few hundred feet. You've been here before, and so you're going to recognize it, but it is going to be a little bit of a hard grunt to get up there, and then you are going to be on more or less flat for the rest of the way toward Pipeline. So this new section, that pavement, and then that right turn onto the Jeep double track, you've saved about 2/3 of a mile, right? But you've saved even more in time because it is much faster than the equivalent outbound stretch. That is all that single track and the sort of tricky descent. You've skipped all of that. And that is the real unsung hero in this course change.
Mm-hmm. You actually skip Old Clavicle Hill inbound, which is terrific, right? And any skipped hike-a-bike section on this course gets my foot, especially Clavicle Hill inbound, well, both ways, but inbound in particular when you're really taxed to the max. Now, you've got just 4 miles and change on a fast fire road with a lot of elevation change here, and including some ups and downs that kind of go left and turn back and go right back towards Pipeline, though you're almost always going up or down on this section. Your odds of a headwind are a little better than a tailwind here, unfortunately, and it can make the difference of this being a real battle or delivering you to the aid station fast and relatively fresh.
Yeah, Hottie, I mean, we've both done this race multiple times. Have you done this section of the course in both a headwind and with a tailwind?
I think it's always been a headwind for me. I know as you're making that approach to the Pipeline aid, it just seems like you're battling right there, trying to reach that aid station, because inevitably I've had wind in my face there.
I've had it both ways. Maybe it's just selective memory. I remember the headwind a lot better than the tailwind. A tailwind feels like nothing, right? It feels like the world is still and that you just happen to feel very strong today, right? A headwind, boy, it seems almost like it does more to you and your morale than a climb, because you can see a climb, right? But either way, at mile 75, you are at the Pipeline aid station. If you're going to have crew waiting for you, make sure you know where they are going to be, meaning which side of the dirt road, because you were just there. It's going to be lined up on either side of you. If you're looking left and they're on the right, it is possible to miss them. It has happened to me. That's why I say that. Plus, you're going to be exhausted, right? And so it's easy to overlook your crew among the hundreds of other crews who are there. And let's face it, a lot of us racers look alike. We're all wearing helmets and glasses and Lycra and, black shorts. And so it is easy for our crews to not see us. So if everyone, they know what you're wearing and what your bike looks like, and you know what they're wearing, you're not going to have a missed connection. It's not a great time to have a missed connection.
Yeah, for crew members, they just need to look down trail and try to spot people in the distance coming over a little horizon, actually. You'll see them coming down towards you, so just got to be on the lookout for them there. Fuel up, get everything you need at this spot, and make sure you take enough because it is a long stretch home, and this is the last time you'll see your crew till you cross the finish line.
Yeah. Hopefully you have saved some matches for this final 30 miles because from here to the finish line, you are going to need every match you've got, and you might want to borrow a few from friends, right? And we're going to be breaking down that final, or we're going to start. We've got miles to go, but we're going to start on this, what I consider the hardest part of the race. From here to the end, it is all tough. Next time on the course.
Last time on the course, we pulled into the pipeline aid station and left you staring at power line in the distance. But not to be overlooked, and we're about to discuss this, is the paved section that takes you to the bottom of power line. It's a little uphill, it's more likely into the wind, and it's where buckled dreams can fall apart.
Oh, yeah. This is a section that gets into my head, Hottie. You're 75 miles into the Leadville 100, but we've said many times before that the rest of the race, the first 75 miles of this race, is just to soften you up for the final quarter of this event. This is where the race gets brutal. And even the parts that look easy on paper, like this one, can really beat you down. On paper, you have no net gain in altitude. You're just crossing the pipeline timing mat at 9,700 feet. You spend 5.5 miles mostly on pavement, and then you turn left at the power line climb, still at 9,700 feet. Should be easy, right? It's not. Hottie, last weekend on my long weekend ride, Lisa and I were riding together, and the subject of the hardest part of the race came up. And I was telling her that this is my least favorite part of the race. This flat 5.5 miles has damn near broken me more than once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably not the hardest part of the race, but as far as favorite parts of the race, this is kind of down there at the bottom of the list, basically because of where it is and what happens to you. You're on tarmac. You're thinking I should be rolling so much faster, then the wind's in your face. You're like, darn, you're then trying to form a group here and no one's cooperating, and you just want to get to the power line and get that climb over with. So, yeah, some frustration here. Again, not really hard on paper, but some frustration. Now, I have a true story about this section of the race. It doesn't involve me, although I've had my struggles here. It involves a good friend of mine who I was actually crewing for one year. And he told me that he came out of the pipeline feed area, headed home, and got on that pavement and just fell apart and started bonking and having so many issues there. I don't know if he was bonking because he had a fresh feed, but started feeling so terrible in this section that he pulled over, stopped, and took a quick cat nap. I mean, like he said, he just kind of passed out for a few minutes. He rallied, woke back up, got on his bike, got back to the finish line, somehow still broke 9 hours, but that's how bad this section of the course made him feel.
Well, good for him for finishing, for sure, because there is a moment where you could either turn left and continue up the power line, or turn right and have an easy paved ride back into Leadville. Of course, that means a DNF. But it is on this part of the course that, I've talked about this before, where I had to pull over and threw up and had a rough time getting myself back into the game. The fact is, you are 3/4 of the way through an incredibly difficult race, headwinds, headwind, exhaustion, just not working together with people. It's a place where if you're going to feel bad, it's probably going to be here. I've had cramps on this segment too. We're kind of building this up, but the fact is, it's 5.5 miles, right? And we're making this seem bigger than it is. That might be partially because you're looking down long stretches of a pretty lonely road. You feel like you're not making a lot of progress, but you are, right? It's all in your head. You're doing great. Remember that. Don't take into what we are saying into account. It's just 5.5 miles of flat, and don't be demoralized.
Yeah.
You're going to make it.
Yeah, we're here to freak you out, and we do a good job of that at times, right? Even when it's just a section of pavement. But there are reasons why, this little section can be harder than it looks on paper. First of all, you're just tired at this point. Like you're going, oh boy, this really is a hard race. Like Fatty and Hadi were right. This thing is hard, right? And I'm way up here at 10,000 feet. What a mess. What did I get my own? So you're tired at this point. Again, we talked about this headwind. I would say, right, 75, 80, 90% of the time, this is a headwind or crosswind section. Never fun on a bicycle to be going into the wind or have one courting you somehow. Working effectively together here with a group can be difficult because, by now the race is really dispersed and spaced out. So finding partners can be difficult here. And then finding somebody with the same amount of power you have in this section can be a challenge in this part too. It feels bigger than it is. Most of this race turns a lot. You're getting a long look at the road, everything that's ahead of you. That can be demoralizing. So you're looking down this long, lonely stretch of road, hoping you find somebody else. You feel slow, like you're not making any progress. Yeah, because actually it is a little uphill. Your tires just feel like they're dragging along here. It all gets into your head. You're actually doing great. So don't let this thing totally demoralize you.
Yep, 100% agree. So let's go ahead and break this part of the course into some bite-sized, easy-to-consume chunks. So you're coming out of the aid station, maybe just very shortly, a couple hundred yards after you come through across the timing mat, you are going to hit a right turn and double track that is going to take you onto the road. That double track lasts for just about a mile. This we've talked about before, of course. It is generally pretty loose, pretty dusty, just depending on whether there has been rain recently. But you have 2 tracks to choose from, and there won't be oncoming traffic at this point. So pick your line and realize that it is going to change a couple of times during that mile.
You can actually get a good head of speed on that double track, too. It's a little downhill as you get to the pavement, which is called Half Moon Road. I didn't know. Thanks for the note there, Fatty. That is Half Moon Road, huh? I didn't know.
Here to help.
I know. It's, everything there just seems to have a number out there. 9A, 9B, 9C. This is a Half Moon Road, which is great to have a name for a road out there. You're likely confronting, again, this headwind or crosswind as you make a left onto Half Moon Road off the double track. So just get ready maybe you want to get ready to lower your head a little bit, get ready for a little extra power to have to come out as you make a left on the Half Moon Road. That's going to be your enemy now for about 2 miles, taking you up to mile 78.
Yep, and you want to look for allies for that common enemy, the headwind, for that couple of miles. So look behind you, not just in front of you. People, of course, you can always try to bridge forward, but look for folks who are behind you. Maybe let them catch up, and you can work together. Because this is often not just a strict headwind, instead of thinking in terms of a pace line that is just, front wheel to back wheel to front wheel to back wheel, think about an echelon, right? Where you are perhaps helping protect each other from that crosswind a little bit. Not everyone who you're going to be riding with is going to understand what an echelon is or how they work. But if you do, and the people you are riding with do, it can help you with a head crosswind in a way that makes a big difference to your ride. And that 2 miles is, it is time when you are preparing for the hardest climb of the day. So any help that you can get and that you can give to another is going to make a better race finish for all of you.
Yeah, don't kill yourself trying to make this echelon. They are very difficult. At the very least, just form a pace line and plow ahead. But if you've got some smarter riders and they know what an echelon is, maybe they've been watching the Tour de France or something, then fine, you can work one of those. But above all else, don't fry yourself trying to form one of these or ride this section, because you really have two. I mean, the work is really ahead of you. You have 2 big climbs, 2 downhills that demand your full attention. And of course, you'll end the race with that climb up the boulevard. That's a lot of racing still ahead of you. So don't mess it up here on this section of tarmac.
Yeah, that is a lot that is ahead of you. So you really do want to conserve on this section. It's the last place in the race, really, where you can conserve. So don't be a hero. And don't let other people be a hero if you can help it, right? There are some people who just naturally want to be the Clydesdale in a group, right? To pull the sleigh. And they are great at it, and they are wonderful people. But if they pull so hard that you can't hang with them, or they pull so hard that they fry themselves and blow themselves up and can't hang with you, they haven't done anyone any good. So if you've got someone who is pulling for more than 30 seconds, say, hey, take a break, get behind, let's stay together. And we'll get to the power line in a little bit better shape.
At mile 78, you'll turn left onto State Highway 300. This is the only way you can go. Well, you can go right, but don't go right. Go left. You'll come to a T intersection is what I'm trying to say. And you got to go left or right. Go left. Please, go left. And this is Highway 300, and this puts you in a different position as far as the wind is concerned. Good chance you'll still be fighting kind of a headwind, crosswind section in this area as well.
Yeah, and you're going to hopefully keep the people that you have accumulated, keep working together. A course marshal is going to guide you on every possible turn here. The turn the Hottie just said is the one I was mentioning a minute ago, where if you turn right, you're going to Leadville, and you're going to miss a big climb, but you're not going to get a finishing, that big buckle that you've been dreaming about for a year. So don't turn right. Now, when you get to mile 79, so another mile or so, you're going to, the road turns a little bit more uphill. You're going to bend right. And at mile 79 and a half, you're going to see the fish hatchery on the left. There's might be a few cars usually parked, cheering on their racers, a few people doing kind of informal feeds. I always see someone there. Sometimes there's someone puts a group together and is handing out Cokes or something like that. Always grateful when someone hands me a Coke here. You're hot, and boy, anything you can get right before the power line or during the power line, much, much appreciated.
Actually, Fatty, I saw a post on the participants page, I think it was, that the person who normally does Cokes at that area can't be there this year. So they are looking for somebody as of this date right now. What is this date right now? We are on July 1st as we're recording here. So if somebody wants to help with the Coke handouts and the Coke hand-ups, I should say, there at the fish hatchery, that would be much appreciated. But chances are you're going to see somebody out there.
I would love to be, I would love to contribute to the Coke Fund. If someone can do that, I will be on the course. But man, if someone can be out there handing up Cokes, boy, I tell you what, and count on my $50 to help pay for those Cokes. So the next 4 miles, you're going. Okay, so you're going to do 1 more mile after the fish hatchery, and then it is a left turn onto the power line segment. And that is an experience that is going to sear itself into your brain forever. And that is what we're going to talk about next time on The Course.
I heard Leadville winner Hannah Otto talk about this upcoming section. She had gotten some separation and gotten her first indication that a win was possible. So one of the things she started doing was eating. In fact, she said she took in as much as she could for the final stretch of the Leadville course. And of course, we know how it ended for Hannah. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
As an athlete with a feed, you can be sure Hannah was not eating chicken as she was making her way down 6th and Harrison. I mean, there is some argument for eating whole foods, not chicken, but other whole foods in the opening half of a long event. But once you are pointed home, those gels and chews really ought to be what you go to.
And whether you are a GU or SIS or Morton or Never Second fan, the feed can fill your pockets or top 2 bag with the fuel you need to get home. That's what Hannah does. That's what Fatty does. And that's what thousands of athletes like you do to keep the levels topped off.
Yeah. And you can claim an $80 annual credit at thefeed.com/Leadville. Register your email, verify your phone number, and then you can start spending your first credit of $20 with the feed right away.
Okay, the final stretch is here. Marilee has got the medals out. You just got to get up to that red carpet. Oh, by the way, for the final miles up the boulevard, we have a special guest with some tips. Power line. How we love thee. Or not. And this really is a cruel transition, Fatty. We were just on pavement, rolling pretty good. Maybe you just got a Coke near the fish hatchery, and suddenly you are face to face with this beast of a climb.
Oh yeah, this is the part of the race I dream about. It is the part of the race I have nightmares about. You're into the last fifth of the race, but man, what a fifth! Especially this next 4 miles.
Let's start with that magic number for the power line climb. It is 4. From the time you turn off the pavement to the top of the power line is 4 miles. No more, possibly a 1/10 of a mile less, but don't let that play in your head. Just go with 4, right? Put all that out of your head and look ahead. Look at your GPS as you make the turn, and it should be at around mile 80.5. Of course, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, not every GPS is the same. So the numbers we're giving you are what mine showed last year, but it's going to be really close to this. But what it means is for the next 4 miles, your life is going to be difficult. Very simple, but difficult. It's worth memorizing the number 80.5 to 84.5 or whatever you start with. There are going to be any number of false summits during this 4 miles. And you will probably start playing games in your head saying, you know, that may be the summit. I think I'm about there, but you're not. You still have, it is 4 miles. And until you've done that 4 miles, it is best to just accept the reality. 1,400 feet of climbing is ahead of you. Honestly, Hadi, I was kind of surprised when I was doing the math. I had to go and double check. I was like, the power line from the base to the summit is only 1,400 feet. It feels like a lot more, right?
Yeah, and I think it has to do with some of those brief downhill moments you get, and then boom, you're back going uphill again. So it really does kind of sucker you into believing, is this it? And then no.
Was that it?
Yeah, no. It goes to show you how much the altitude and exhaustion affects you, because most of us have climbed this much distance easily on several courses before.
Mm-hmm. There is a climb close to home that I have that is 1,400 feet of climbing in 4 miles. I do it multiple times per week. It is not a big deal. I don't think about it. However, normally when I do that ride, I'm not doing it, at 5,000 feet above where I live. I live at 5,000 feet. Also, I'm not doing it after I have already done 80 miles of hard racing. It really does impact you in a way that is just hard to believe. So the fact is, the power line is brutal, right? It is, and this first little bit in particular is very brutal. And it may, if you let it, color the rest of how you perceive the rest of this 4 mile stretch. So let's break it down into its constituent sort of like mile by mile parts, sort of separate the reality of the race, of the course, from the mythology that Hadi and I are doing, trying to freak you out for this 100-mile race.
All right, I'll start with the first half mile then. Are we to really say it's not that tough? I suppose it is, right? The first half mile, we're talking about when you cross the creek here. So you come off the pavement and you go downhill to start off with, and then you cross the old creek, what used to be water here. Now they've covered it up. And onto the straightaway, and then you start to grind up to that main event. Now, before you get up to what I would call power line proper, you do climb up along that fence line again. It's on your left this time, but you're getting a little preview of what's ahead of you because you can stare right up at this thing, the power line climb. So you do about 150 feet of climbing was your estimation here as you motor along the fence here.
Yeah, that's what the math looks like. From when you get off the road to when you cross, there is a fence off to your left, and then there is a gate that you go through right before you do that sort of sweeping hairpin that puts you on the really steep stuff. You're only climbing 150 feet net in that first half mile. So you're kind of winding up for the real deal. But that half mile is part of the 4 miles that we are talking about. Okay. So let's talk about what happens after you get to that hairpin, right? The next half mile is savage. It's going to be one of the main things that you remember from the Leadville 100. Having done this 20 plus times, one of my main takeaways of the race is just this annual push, where I am off my bike and, my handlebars are 3 feet ahead of me and I'm stretching my calves, trying to work out a cramp, and I'm just slogging my way up this hill. So yes, it is intense. It is iconic. And frankly, in a way, it's wonderful because you're doing something that you normally would refuse to do. But it's just, this kind of climbing, this, on my Strava, I look at the gradient, and it is like there are places where it is 12%, 15%, 25%, 30% for reals. It's not like that for very long. It is a half mile that is just out of your mind difficult. And anymore, I would say it's not even as difficult as it used to be, because it used to be the line selection was a critical part of whether you were going to be able to ride parts of it. Now, it isn't as bad as it used to be.
I always went into the power line climb with this idea that I was going to ride up the fence line, like we just talked about, make the left-hander, and then the following hard right-hander while seated and pedaling. And my goal always was to make it around that right-hander until I got to the section that really said, okay, now you're going straight up. Like now it is straight up and under the power lines. And I'd always be well prepared to dismount at that section. And this is also kind of the beginning of the ruts too, when you're on the bottom section of the power line. So this real start of the rut section, I'd always say, okay, this is where I'm going to start my walking. Now I've gone from riding to walking at this point.
Yeah. And I have, out of the, 23 times that I finished this race, I would say I have walked that part 21 times, right? There was one time when I rode all of this difficult part, and there was one time when I rode the entirety of the power line without putting a foot down at all, mostly just to prove a point. And I was very proud of that point. But it is, anymore, it is kind of a straight up power test, right? Maybe you can ride it, maybe you can't. The fact is, if you do see someone who is riding, you may pass them while you are walking. It is, people are going to be in their granny gear, and it is not going to be fast. Is riding even the wise thing to do? If you are fast, then absolutely it is. But if you know you can ride the power line fast, you don't need us telling you that. You already know. Most of us are going to get off and walk for this half mile and use that time to stretch your calves, to get a breath, and to get ready so that you can ride the other 3 miles of the power line, because that part, if you were ready for it, is rideable. Mm-hmm.
Like we said, this segment was graded about 3 years ago, which meant it is now rideable for more people, and there's more room actually for bikes to be left to right across the power line going up. But since it's been a while since they graded, it's probably worth a look if you have the time to go out and have a look. I wouldn't say ride it. Go out and look at it, right? And see, okay, and this may be one of those mornings you go out and recon and do the descent of power line. Just take note of how the ruts look and whether or not you think you might be able to, put 3 abreast across this. So when you're coming back, as we are right now, you'll have an idea of, first of all, is it rideable at all? And that's largely going to depend on how good you feel at that point, because it's certainly not worth struggling up this section if you don't have the legs to do it. Just get off and walk. You're actually going to do yourself a favor by walking. And like Fatty said, you may be even faster. Now, if you do decide to ride, or either way, there's some kind of rules to live by here, to work by on this section. And that is, as Fatty noted here, there's room for probably 3 bikes left to right across the power line going up it. So the idea here is if you are a walker, move to the right and give those folks who do want to try and clean this thing, all the room possible to move left and right across the trail as they're, trying to get their bike and themselves up the power line. So again, if you're walking, good idea to move to the right. And if you're trying to ride this thing, occupy the left half or the left 2/3 of the power line.
Right. Yeah. Treat it like a freeway, right? Slower people in the right lane. Also, if you have to walk, and most of us are going to have to walk, this year, since I'm planning to race this on a single speed, I will certainly be walking this. I will be getting off my bike before I even finish doing that hairpin, right? But you're exhausted. Of course, you are thinking about your own race, but look behind you, look ahead of you. And if you see someone who is trying to ride it, call out for other people, try to give that person who is, for whatever reason, has decided to try to ride up this thing, make way for them, right? Maybe give them a cheer and a pat on the back, right? Now, listen also for the power line. It is kind of cool to hear that thing buzzing above you. It's kind of a weird sound. If it is raining, it really freaks me out. But it has not been raining on race day, I don't know, for the last several years. I don't know, maybe we're overdue, Hadi. I hope not. We ought to do an episode on rain gear you ought to bring for this race, just in case.
Don't say rain. Don't.
Just yeah. So if you're going to really, the important part of this part of the course is if you are going to ride, awesome. If you are going to walk with purpose, right? It's hard. You're exhausted. Absolutely. But remember, this is the last truly hard, spin your head around part of the race. Once you've pushed past this, believe it or not, everything else is going to be a little bit easier. Not easy, but easier.
Not easy. Also look for folks doing hand-ups here, too. You might see a trail angel out there with a gel or a drink or a push, too. If you're trying to ride it, you'll often find people willing to give you a little push as you try to muscle your way up. It's totally within the rules. No one's ever been DQ'd or anything or had their time, or been relegated because they accepted a push on the power line. Totally acceptable to do that. So again, watch for people doing hand-ups. If you'd like one, take one. It's totally within the rules.
Absolutely. I will say that the time that I rode the entirety of the power line without putting a foot down, someone came up to give me a push and I said, no. It really was. It was me wanting to see if I could do that entire thing under my own power without ever unclipping. So, but it's like you say, most people, for whatever reason, take the push. It is nice to have. Once you get past this half mile, you basically have been going up the power line for about a mile now. There's going to be a little recovery, right? You've got a mile behind you, a couple hundred yards of descent and a little bit of flat before that descent. Drink, eat. It may well be quite hot by this time of the day. Spin out your legs. Make sure that you're hydrated because for most of the time, you're breathing so hard for the rest of this of this 4-mile climb. Drinking is really hard just because while you're drinking, you're not breathing, right? And breathing is super important.
So once you are able to get back on, and by the way, if you're a walker and you start walking that lower section, it would be very difficult at any point during that walking section to try and mount and get going. Once you're committed to walking, you're walking. That's just walk it. Just do that.
Just walk. Yeah.
I believe, Fatty, it is 3 power poles up you're trying to get to. If memory serves, and that is the point where you can mount. I thought I always counted 3.
Is it
3 power poles or 3 power? A pole is a bad word for it. It's bigger than a power pole, obviously.
Yeah, they're sort of two poles and a bar across, if I remember right, something like that, right? I've never counted. That's fascinating, Hadi. That would be actually a very interesting number to know. I'm sure that we'll get comments on that, but yeah, that'd be a good thing to count.
I believe in my mind I always counted 3 poles, and they're not exactly close together. They're a good distance apart. But nevertheless, you'll see it'll become pretty evident when you can mount up again. And you'll be back to climbing. Now, this section, or once you start climbing, it's not as hard as that, straight up pushing, walking thing you just got off of. It's still steep. We're talking about 10% grades and can be semi-technical. So you'll kind of run into moments where, you're riding, you're climbing, but you got to pay attention to your front wheel, back wheel, making sure your line choices are good. Otherwise, you're going to be just off and walking again, and you'll get little moments of recovery. So all that kind of gets mixed in here once you remount or once you're back on your bike here.
That's right. And I find this once you are back on your bike after that hike-a-bike section, let's just call it that, it's a very engaging, interesting part of the course. Under non-race conditions, I have a lot of fun on this part of the course, uphill or down. Of course, on a race day, it becomes very much more about line selection. I am looking for the smoothest line where I have the least number of places where I have to lift a front wheel and, spike my power to get up and over something, right? I'm looking for smooth lines, and I will weave and paperboy my way all over the all over the trail in order to do it. There's not anyone coming in the other direction. The line is your own, right? So keep your head up. Don't stare at your stem. Look for the line that is going to work for you.
And good luck. I mean, this is, if this is where you're raised, it's amazing how much time gets spent here and you're hardly moving forward at all, but it's part of the course, man. You got to get it done somehow. And you will. I mean, as long as you take it in chunks, you establish a little goal, like I'm going to make it to the next power pole. I'm going to make it to that spot where Fatty said I can remount. Right, I'm gonna grab the gel. I'm gonna take the push. So it does seem like you're going nowhere, but you are moving, and you'll get there.
And it's just 4 miles, and we've talked about 2 of it. We've talked about 2 miles of this 4-mile beast, and the good news is, after this first 2 miles, it really does. The second 2 miles is not as hard as the first 2 miles. At least that's how I have it divided up in my mind. So with the 2 hardest behind you, the 2 easiest ahead of you. We're going to talk about these, sarcasm quotes, easy miles in the power line in the next installment of The Course.
Yeah, this is Power Line Part 2. The climb's so nice, we broke it in 2. Look, the walking is done, and now we're going to try and ride. And this really is one of those make or break spots on the course, this upper section of Power Line. And then after we get through that, we'll take you over the top and get you off this damn thing.
That's right. Get off this mountain. You are now into the last fifth of the race, but man, what a fifth. This is not an easy part. So let's talk about the numbers here. First, we're on the second half of the power line climb, so the math is finally on your side. So going back to the first couple miles of the power line, you've netted 1,000 feet. You've gone from 9,700 feet to 10,700 feet, and it is actually more climbing than that. It's not just 1,000 feet that you've climbed, because you remember in that first half, there is a little descent, and then you have to make up that altitude. So really, in 2 miles, you've climbed about 1,200 feet.
Yeah, and the second half of power line, and I kind of find this almost hard to believe, you net 400 feet of climbing, about a third as much climbing as in the second half as in the first. Of course, you're climbing from 10,700 to 11,000 feet, so it's not going to feel easy, and that's probably why 400 feet, you're kind of like, what? Any veteran who's been there before goes, what? It's only 400 feet, but it's not as much as you might think. You have done the hard part.
However, there is more technical climbing. Maybe that's why it feels hard, Hottie. You wouldn't think of it as highly technical normally when your legs are fresh, but it feels technical now. You have to spike your energy to get up over those roots or to get up over that one rock. Momentum is not something that you really build in this part of the race.
Yeah, there's a lot of back tire slippage going on in parts of this course. That's probably another reason why that 400 feet feels like 4,000. So there's that too, but there should be always at least a good line. And by the time you get to race day, you're guaranteed that many people have discovered that line and hopefully established it somehow with tire tracks. Follow that prominent line and you'll rarely go wrong.
And on that note, actually, Hottie, some more good news. We told you that the power line is 4 miles long, and that is true. But the final half mile or so of that is a pretty gentle grade, and it's going to feel, honestly, it feels flat, if you remember, relative to what you've been riding for the last 3.5 miles. It is going to be your first good one-handed riding opportunity since you got off the pavement before the power line climb, which means, you guessed it, it is a great opportunity to eat and drink something.
Mm-hmm. To eat and drink, our ongoing theme here in the course. Look for every opportunity to do that. Powerline is now essentially behind you. You are 84.5 miles into this race, and if you're feeling lightheaded, well, that is because you are once again above 11,000 feet, right at 11,000 to be more exact, and you have 20 miles to go.
Yep. And another piece of good news, I'm not sure if 11,100 feet is good news, but let's treat it like that. Of the final 20 miles in this race, the next 5, so a quarter of what you have left, is going to be all downhill. You are about to drop over 1,000 feet in the next 5 miles.
Mm-hmm. So Some fun question mark ahead of you? Yeah, maybe. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So the downhill doesn't necessarily always mean easy riding. You're at the top of the Sugarloaf now, and Sugarloaf is as rocky and as techy as it gets at Leadville.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about this before, Hadi. We both love Sugarloaf. We like it going up. We like it going down. But when you have 85 miles of racing in your legs and your braking fingers are exhausted, I have actually had cramps in my index fingers from all the braking in Leadville. You are exhausted, and something that is normally fun can be really difficult. So a little bit of advice here.
So let's start with your approach to the section. You'll remember it from going up. It is, rocky. Water generally pours down this section of the Sugarloaf during the spring runoff. And so you have a lot of exposed rock here, which means you're in for a rough ride. You have two approaches. If you're a great descender and you are feeling good, yeah, you can be somewhat aggressive here. The rocks are, there's flat potential, and there always is, and you could pinch flat through here. But I think the idea for most folks here, Fatty, is to keep it conservative. You've made it this far, don't blow it on this section.
Yeah, you don't want to crash out in the final 20 miles of the race. Also, I would say stay loose, right? For me, at least, when I am tired, I tighten up. I stop really flowing in the descents. You have to remind yourself, make a mental note. Stay loose on the downhills. Let your legs be your best suspension. Let your elbows be great suspension. Don't let yourself tighten up. Absorb those bumps and rocks and roots as you ride.
Yeah, like our friend Lee McCormack, the skills trainer, tells us, light hands, heavy feet, especially through a section like this. And then watch your line. There's generally a best line. Again, a lot of spring runoff here. Choose the line. Also, riders have been through this section before, so finding a good line, finding the best line, unless you are salty sweat in your eyes and can't see in front of you, you should be able to see, the best line. Just use it by all means.
That's right. Remember, there have been people who have been riding this section of the course and every section of the course, the entire summer. There has been the camp. All those folks have been riding this section of the course. People have been practicing on it. And, of course, there was the stage race that happened just a couple of weeks ago. Unless there has been a lot of rain recently, the best line will be thoroughly burned in. You'll be able to see it. And then finally, remember, it is just 1 mile. I couldn't believe this when I was doing the math on a Hadi. It feels like more than a mile going down Sugarloaf. But from the summit of Powerline to when you make that hard right angle, right where the course marshal is directing you, it is just a mile. Just a mile. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can, because it's pretty slow going up, and then you got a fairly quick coming down. I would say the toughest section on your body, at least, is that lower section. So as you approach, and you'll recognize it, it's the straight section. As you approach that straight section, just really watch it in there. You can let the bike just fly through it and try to bounce off the top of all those rocks, but it is very rough right at the bottom section. And once you reach the bottom, again, you're going to make a right-hand turn. There's going to be a marshal there. There's probably going to be those pink ribbons there sitting there. Don't go left. What if you do not go left on Hagerman? Because you'll probably end up way out on the Colorado Trail or someplace bizarre. You want to go right. As you reach Hagerman, you'll be back on that washboard road.
Mm-hmm. And that is an acute angle. So, really a hairpin turn that you're going to be making there. So, you've done the mile of Sugarloaf. You've still got 4 miles of descending to do before you start climbing again. And you've got 19 miles left in the race, and we're going to get to all of that, most of it, from here to the Carter's Aid Station in the next installment of the course.
Last time on the course, we got you over Powerline and down Sugarloaf. Now we are on Hagerman. It is a slight downhill where the assistance of gravity can be countered by that washboard surface.
Yeah, it is a downhill, and it's tempting to coast. Don't. That is number one recommendation from me today. A few minutes of pedaling here at an easy cadence will keep your legs from cooling down, and so that it hurts when you start climbing again. and it's going to get you a little bit closer to the finish line a little sooner. This is a section that is just about 2 miles.
Yeah, what you're trying to do is find that clean line, and any folks who have watched Perrier Bay kind of get the idea of this. You'll watch the riders when they get on the cobbles, and they'll ride to the sides of the cobbles, like almost in the grass. Why? Because they're going to find less rock, less of those coveted stones there. Same idea here with these washboards. You might be able to find a clean line off to the sides. Either way, just look for one, because really you don't want to be rattling over these washboards.
Yeah. Today, as in yesterday, I will tell you, the right side of the road as you come down is the clean line. It is practically washboard free. So you will be able to stay on the side of the road that you would naturally gravitate to anyway, and you will be able to just fly. That said, there is a sharp left at the end of Hagerman's onto Turquoise Lake Road. Scrub your speed, because I have seen folks slide out there. It gets pretty loose.
Oh, yeah, going left there on the Turquoise Lake Road. I can't believe you set me up now, Fatty, to talk about the Turquoise Lake. Well, first of all, the descent is pretty straightforward, and it's a good place to tuck in and get a little arrow and blast down towards May Queen. That's not the hard part. The next is the hard part, and I've moaned and groaned about this section of the course, I think every 5 seasons, all 5 seasons I have, because this one bites me in the rear every time I've done it. I don't know why. I think it's in my head. So it's about a mile, I guess, to get down to, or is it a mile on Hagerman or a mile down to May Queen? I kind of forget where that is, what our mileage is there.
Right. So you're doing 2 miles on Hagerman, then you make that sharp left turn, and you've got a mile and change more of paved downhill before you make that right bend, and you're right at mile 90, and then you begin the climb to Carter. That is the climb that Hottie hates. That said, if you know the distance and the altitude, you'll find that it is very helpful. So here are the numbers. When you climb, beginning when you go past the May Queen campground and do that right bend and you start to really climb, you are just going to be 2.8. Just round it up in your head to 3, but so you'll be pleasantly surprised when it's 0.2 of a mile less than that. And 700 feet is all net of climbing. Now, there are a little bit of short dips in here, so you're going to maybe do 800 feet of climbing, but it is not that much. So, Hottie, if you were to write it again with those numbers in your head, I think that you would find it less of a mind bugaboo than it has been in the past.
Well, what I found here is the reason why it is as hard as it is. It's nearly a 3-mile climb, and that's no joke, right? 5 kilometers is not a joke of a climb, and it's 700 feet of climbing. So there's reason there to go, oh, goodness, this is pretty tough. You've wrote down here for me, Fatty, something I don't do. Rhythm can help you here. I'll make a note of that because I probably have poor rhythm in this section as well. I kind of slog it up there. So settle in. Try to use your rhythm as you climb this paved section towards Carter. Now, Carter will be very obvious. I mean, there were going to be people gathered around there. There might be a few cars parked there. It is a left to get back onto the dirt. And usually we have a tent there. This is what they call an unofficial feeding area. It's staffed by volunteers. There are Cokes and food and things, and it's open and free to anybody. So go ahead and grab what you want right there.
Yeah, no question about it. And even before you get to Carter, on the right side of the road, Garmin sets up a nice little pop-up tent where, and this was last year, and they did this again at Crusher and the Tusher, where they had ice chest after ice chest of ice cold Cokes, the little ones that they were handing out. And I tell you, Hottie, having one of those basically in the middle of that climb is just, it brings you back from the dead practically. It is so nice. So, kudos to Garmin for doing that in the past, and fingers crossed that they do it again this year. So yeah, look for the Garmin tent, say thank you, and grab a Coke. It is nice. Once you do that, you're going to notice that there are little flat spots, right? And knowing the altitude and the distance that you're going can really help. So just a net of around 800 feet of climbing and less than 3 miles till you get to Carter. However, once you hit Carter, you are not done climbing. I need to underscore that. You will remember when you came in and turned out, at the beginning of this race and turned off of the Carter aid station onto Turquoise Lake Road, you'd been going down for a minute. Now that downhill for a minute is going to turn into a few minutes of climb. One other thing, Hadi, that I noticed while pre-riding this part of the road on the pavement, someone has spray painted some distances on the road saying, 2 miles to go, 0.5 miles to go. Ignore those numbers. I don't know who they're for or what measurements they are doing, but in both cases, they are not for you. You have less than 2 miles of climbing left when you see that thing spray painted on the road. And you have less than 0.5 till you turn at Carter when you see the 0.5 miles to go. So ignore those things. They are messing with your mind. Your distances are different than whoever those were intended for. So you are the big takeaway here is don't let this segment psych you out. Pavement on mountain bikes always feels slow. Uphill on pavement always feels super slow. There's a good chance it's going to be warm by the time you do this, and so heat can psych you out as well. But it is just 3 miles or less till you get to Carter, and you are going to do it. And remember, you've got a red carpet waiting for you just 10 miles or so after you get to the top.
So now I know why I hate that climb. It's 3 miles. The sun and the heat is beating off the pavement, and it moves just sluggish. Knobbies on tarmac. No fun. There's good reason to hate that section and let it get into your head. So Keevens, thank God for Keevens, right? Because we're back in the trees. But this is a rolling section and actually goes a little more uphill. Once you get out of Carter, there's probably a net climb here before you peak out, right? But for the most part, you've got some fun, fast rolling sections. There's a tricky right turn though that you're going to want to scrub some speed for. That right turn and the flowiest dirt road descent on the course. So want to check yourself in certain sections because there can be some crashes. There was a terrible crash on the Keevens descent last year, I should say. So you're going to be a little rummy, a little out of it in this area, and you're probably thinking about the red carpet. You still need to focus here on Keevens.
Yep. I have seen people flat on the Keevens downhill, and, obviously people have crashed there before. So keep yourself in check. Obviously, you're excited to get to the finish line, but make sure you get there safe and, avoid the chunky, rocky stuff if you can. So right at 97 miles or so, you are going to take a right turn, and you are going to be on that flat section after the Keevens descent that goes on for basically 3 miles. Now, it rolls a little bit, and there's some net descending, so you can really move fast, but it is 3 miles, so you're going to be there for a minute. Then you're going to take a left onto pavement, and you're going to go over the railroad tracks. And, Hadi, if the Leadville 100 were 100 miles, you'd be at the finish line right now. It's when you cross that railroad tracks is 100.0 miles. Unfortunately for you, and trust me, you will think it is unfortunate at the moment this happens, it is not the end. You have about 5 miles left in this race.
Watch that mileage. We know Leadville Trail 100, but 1 year they're going to start putting 105 on the T-shirts and the sweatshirts and everything else. And one more thing about that Keevens descent, Fatty, and on the dirt portion, is there some water bars when you're carrying a lot of speed? And I just want to remind folks just to watch it in there, be really focused, because you can go through one of those water bars and come flying out of it, and they'll toss you. Like, they can chuck you a little bit. So just be careful in there before you hit the pavement. And then, once you hit the pavement, then you can take a little mental break before you're back on dirt again.
Yep. You've got flat pavement for about a third of a mile after you cross the railroad tracks, and a marshal is going to point you across the road, and you are at the gutter with less now than 5 miles from the finish line. But you've got one real challenge ahead of you, the boulevard, a.k.a. the Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
We hope you've saved one more match, because from here to the finish line, you're going to want it. You're going to need it. We'll explain why next time on The Course. Let's get on to the course. This is, for the folks who don't know, every show this year, almost every show this year, we've been breaking down the Leadville Trail 100 course segment by segment. Unfortunately, we left people hanging, I think, out there on off of Keevan somewhere for a couple of weeks. So we owe them a segment here, don't we? And to help us, look who we have to my left here.
I do not know. No, of course we know.
Yes. This is Rose Grant, everybody, the two-time defending champ of the Leadville Trail 100. She is not only a super bike rider, but a super mom and a heck of an athlete to follow. And we're very, very glad to have Rose here to help us out with this final course segment and some other stuff, too, if you don't mind. So, Rose, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yep. So, Fatty, where are we? We've got the course. Let's have Rose, first of all, give us a little, her little kind of thoughts on this last segment. We're talking about, of course, the section I love to call the gutter, and, of course, the boulevard climb. What comes to mind what are you thinking about as you approach that portion of the course?
You're so close and you're so far at the same time. Yeah. It seems like it'll never end, and if you're battling with someone, it's just pretty brutal.
Brutal is right. The thing is, when you cross Turquoise Lake Road, if you look down at your GPS, you will notice you have gone 101 miles. This is no longer any question about this being a 100-mile mountain bike race. You are back on the dirt. You are paralleling the railway, and it is pretty easy for about 0.8 of a mile. Then you hit. If you aren't careful, you're going to go right through some surprisingly deep mud holes. They will go right past your axle and stop you cold if you decide to find out how deep they are. And then a tough left turn, and you are suddenly going uphill. Rose, as someone who is an actual champion of this race, how do you handle the boulevard?
Well, that left-hand turn, you actually see what you have to ride up, and I just think, I can't believe they do this to us. It only lasts for a couple minutes at most. And then the boulevard, I think it just takes a lot of mental toughness. You know you're not done for a little bit still. Oftentimes there's a headwind and you have a slight uphill, so you're still working really hard. So I think if you're mentally prepared for that section, you'll do yourself a favor in knowing, like, after you descend Keevans, you're actually not done. And I think that's a mistake I made, maybe, in the past. And you're not done. The race isn't over till it's over. So
let's talk about technique real quick there, because when you make that left, that's mile 102. Instantly, you're in kind of loose terrain, bouldery almost. What are some of the techniques you use to make sure that your back wheel's not slipping out on you? How do you approach that first pitch right there?
It is rocky and it's loose, so choosing a line that looks good, and then use your gears. You don't want to stand up there, so keep it smooth. And you're going to be tired, so keeping it smooth is going to be hard, but smooth is fast. So that's what I would encourage you to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to use my gears.
Because you're going to have one. you have no choice.
Apart from that is great. Great advice. The thing is, you and I rode up the boulevard today, and then it rained. It is the line for that first rocky 0.2 of a mile changes from weather event to weather event. So keep your eyes forward. Don't look at just the next rock, but the line that is going to be the easiest to get you past that gate. And then we promise the boulevard is going to get a little bit less steep, and it's going to get a lot more smooth. And if you treat it like two separate things, you're going to have a better time. My mistake was, the first time I ever rode up the boulevard, was that first 0.2 of a mile kind of defeated me. I was like, it is going to be like this for the rest of my life. And it kind of felt like it was. You get past that and realize that now it is a 2% grade, if that, and you can really start to roll and start thinking about that red carpet finish.
Then it does turn to packed dirt before you eventually hit pavement. At what point, Rose, do you look over your shoulder at all, see if anybody's coming? especially the past 2 years when you knew that you're out in front.
Yeah, I did that last year. I had a really great draft. We were moving really fast. I looked back, and I just assumed it was Mariah Wilson, who we're very, very sad not to have her with us this year. But I know how strong she is, and I was like, I told the guy I was drafting off of, I was like, she's coming for me. I gotta go. And it was about 2 miles, and I burned every match I had to the finish, and it wasn't her. So, yeah, you definitely can psych yourself out there.
Yep. And that brings up an important, the numbers for the Boulevard. It feels like it is 10 miles long. It feels like you are climbing 700 feet. But the reality is the Boulevard is 2.2 miles long. It is 360 feet of climbing. It is a pretty achievable thing. It just feels like so much more because you are, of course, finishing a 105-mile race.
Yeah, and then you're on pavement at, what, mile 104?
104 point something.
104.5. You make a left on pavement, then a right on 6th. And then another little kicker up 6.
It hurts.
That one hurts. Not fun.
It's only 50 feet, but it feels like a lot more. You are done and ready for it to be done. Mm-hmm. And then you're over the top, and you can see that finish line. The red carpet, maybe a red light. How does that feel?
Yeah, what a relief. It's a very joy-filled moment.
Yep. A great moment, too. And, of course, the person that's standing at the end of that red carpet was our first guest here, Mara Lee. She has a medal for you. And a hug, hopefully. And if you're not bashful, you'll take that hug. I hope you will. So, Fanny, let's stick with our course theme because we've covered it, all year, and get Rose's impressions about the course, a wider view, Rose, of the course. Like, what are the things you circle on your playbook about the Leadville Trail 100 course that you really feel like you have to focus on?
Well, I think I like the course because I do break it down into sections. It's an easy course to break into sections. It's a climb, descent, flat, climb, descent, and then you come back the same. And so it helps with fueling a lot because I think, gel at the top of the climbs. I need my rice cakes on pavement, dirt. So it's, you can easily break it up, and that might be confusing, but I study it a lot, and I break it down into achievable segments. And I think that helps a lot to complete it, and it helps it to go by fast.
Oh, we're going to miss Rose Grant. As many of you may have heard, Rose is calling it a career. But hey, her advice is still great, and that's why we've included it on this compilation episode of the course.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this episode. If you like the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating. Write us a review. Tell a friend. Tell Ken Klober. Tell Kimo Seymour. No matter who you tell, though, we are really easy to find and remember. We are Leadville.fm.
For now, good luck with your planning, prep, and training. We will be back with more to help you get ready to reach that starting line and hopefully the finish line.